Chapter 323. Not long after the two elders charged towards the Fergus family, the rest of the Wallen family also charged towards the Fergus family. Among them, there were even those who had just pledged allegiance to the Wallen family, evidently wanting to use this method to display their loyalty. The fact that the Fergus family was actually able to produce two barbarian-level blood fiends, and even contend against the two barbarian blood warriors of the Wallen family greatly surprised them. If they had known earlier, they wouldn't have been in such a hurry to betray the Fergus family. However, since they had already betrayed them, there was naturally no turning back. Now, they could only hope that the final victor would be the Wallen family. Otherwise, they would certainly be miserable. Swish, swish, swish. Looking at the rest of the Wallen family charging towards him, Gray's eyes revealed a cold expression. In front of him, icy wind blades appeared and slashed towards the Wallen family. Poo, piu, piu. The icy wind blades were emerald green like jasper, but at this moment, they had transformed into the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Every one of them was enough to slash several people in half. Some of the weaker ones were even directly frozen to death by the cold air. Apart from the young man and the three berserkers, no one else was able to resist. Even the ferocious blood warriors were killed. However, even the young man and the three berserkers found it extremely difficult to resist the sharpness of the icy wind blades. The icy wind blades were the ability of a mixed blood fiend that had reached the barbarian level. It was obviously not something they could contend against. Poo, piu, piu. Immediately, people from the Wallen family were continuously killed by Gray's icy wind blades. Reckless, seeing his own family members being killed one after another by Gray, the skinny elder fighting the iron-armed barbarian ape snorted coldly. Then, suddenly, a large number of plants grew at a terrifying speed and quickly wrapped around the iron-armed barbarian ape's legs and hands. Then, with an icy gaze, he charged towards Gray with a murderous intent. At the same time, the elder fighting the iron-armed barbarian ape's plants and vines madly grew and attacked the iron-armed barbarian ape. Immediately, the iron-armed barbarian ape, which was as large as a mountain, was sent flying. With a murderous gaze, he charged towards Earl Fergus. "Looks like I can't hide it anymore." Seeing the skinny old man rushing towards him with killing intent in his eyes, Gray remained calm. The Fergus family had a magic weapon that could control barbaric-level blood fiends. They had obtained a weapon that could control barbaric-level blood fiends from Robtray. The Fergus family could control a total of 2 barbaric-level blood fiends. This was the impression the Fergus family gave to the outside world. Originally, Gray wanted to rely on this little bit of combat power to see if it was enough to contend against the Wallen family. Now it seemed that it was impossible. Bang! The power of blood flowed into the purple metal ring. Suddenly, a huge green praying mantis appeared. Its huge body waved 2 huge sighs. It tore through the air and attacked the skinny old man. On the other side, Earl Fergus, who had long been prepared, also quickly took out the bear-shaped brute-level blood beast that he was controlling from his rune space bag. In fact, the 2 barbaric-level blood fiends just now were controlled by Gray. He didn't even take out the one he was controlling. As for why Gray could control so many barbaric-level blood fiends, Gray explained that it was one of the benefits he had obtained from trading with the ghost merchant. "You can actually control more barbaric-level blood fiends?" Seeing the sudden appearance of the ghost blade mantis, the skinny old man's expression finally changed. He finally felt that things had gone beyond their expectations. Because they knew that the Fergus family could control 2 barbaric-level blood fiends, the Wallen family had sent him and another barbaric blood warrior to be foolproof. But now, he finally felt that things had developed beyond his expectations. The Fergus family could actually control more barbaric-level blood fiends. On the other side, the old man who was charging towards Earl Fergus also changed his expression when he saw the ghost blade mantis. However, he still charged towards Earl Fergus without hesitation. The person in front of him was one of the controllers of the barbaric-level blood fiends. As long as he was killed, one of the barbaric level blood fiends would immediately lose its ability to move. However, just as he was about to reach Earl Fergus, a huge creature appeared in front of him and blocked his path. It was a humongous, 7-meter-tall, bear-shaped beast with brown fur all over its body. Without a doubt, it was another barbaric-level blood fiend. His expression was completely shocked. Including the previous barbaric-level blood fiend, there were now 4 of them. In other words, the Fergus family could control 4 barbaric-level blood fiends. How can this be? How can the Fergus family control 4 barbaric-level blood fiends? Seeing that his family's elder had shaken off the barbaric-level blood fiends and was charging towards Grey and Fergus, the young man heaved a sigh of relief. The strength displayed by the other party was simply too powerful. He alone was able to suppress him and the other 3 barbaric blood warriors. He even had the strength to attack the others. However, what he did not expect was that the other party could control even more barbaric-level blood fiends. In the blink of an eye, 2 more barbaric-level blood fiends appeared. This result caused him to break down. His family's 2 elders were very powerful. One barbaric-level blood fiend was definitely not a match for them. However, if there were 2 of them, it would be hard to say. Not only him, but the expressions of the other members of the Wallen family changed as well. The Fergus family was actually able to control 4 barbaric-level blood fiends. This was simply too shocking. How can this be? How can the Fergus family have such strength? If they had such strength, why didn't they show it earlier? The expressions of the aristocrats who had betrayed the Fergus family and defected to the Wallen family had completely changed. Their hearts were filled with resentment towards the Fergus family for not revealing this strength earlier. If they had known that the Fergus family had such strength, they would definitely not have betrayed them. They had obviously betrayed the Fergus family, but now they were blaming the Fergus family. The word shameless had been used on them. Crack! Under the brute force of the iron-armed barbarian ape, the vines binding it were all broken. It immediately pounced towards the skinny elder and attacked him together with the ghost blade mantis. The tusked boar that had been sent flying also got up and attacked the other elder together with the bear-shaped blood fiend. Instantly, the 2 elders could no longer maintain their calm. They used their plant abilities and close-range attacks simultaneously, trying their best to resist the attacks of the 2 barbaric-level blood fiends. Grey looked at the young man and smiled, revealing his white teeth. "How about it? Do you want me to hand over my magic weapon, cut off one of my arms, and become a servant of the Wallen family for the rest of my life?" Being stared at by Grey, the young man suddenly felt a chill and could not help but take a few steps back. At this moment, he finally felt fear. Swish, swish, swish. Grey rode his horse and charged into the Wallen family's ranks. All the members of the Wallen family avoided him with fear on their faces. He looked at the young man and the other 3 berserkers, and once again, he slashed at the 4 of them with his icy wind blades. Under the barbarian-level icy wind blades, the 4 of them could only block them in a sorry state. They could only block and had no way to counterattack. Pup! After a series of difficult blocks, one of the berserkers finally could not hold on any longer. He was directly hit by an icy wind blade, and his entire body was frozen and sent flying. However, before he could break free from the ice on his body and get up, another icy wind blade appeared and slashed his neck. Immediately, his head flew high into the air and fell to the ground with a thud. He couldn't be more dead. Pup! Soon, the 2nd and 3rd berserkers followed in the footsteps of the first. One of them was hit by 2 of Grey's icy wind blades consecutively, breaking his bones and shattering his heart. Another person was cut in half at the waist and died. At this point, of the 4 berserkers of the Wallen family, only the young man was left. As for the rest of the Wallen family, there were only a dozen or so people left. Even if Grey did not target these people, under the influence of Grey's icy wind blades, many of the Wallen family members were still killed. Jumping down from his horse, Gray directly pounced on the young man. Crackle! A berserker of the Wallen family blocking the way was cut in half by Gray's sword, and his corpse turned into 2 pieces of charcoal. Seeing Gray pouncing on him, the young man's expression changed. Ignoring the loss of blood energy, a large number of plants madly grew, protecting him and attacking Gray. Swish, 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 swish. 5 icy wind blades attacked him one after another. 3 icy wind blades slashed through, and all the plants were neatly cut in half and frozen into ice sculptures. Swish! The 4th icy wind blade slashed out, and the young man's magic sword was wrapped in flames. He gritted his teeth to block, but he was hit and staggered back. Swish! The 5th icy wind blade slashed out, and the young man's expression became flustered as he hurriedly dodged to the side. Pop! The icy wind blade brushed past his right arm, and suddenly his right arm, together with the sword in it, was sent flying high into the air, and fell to the ground with a clatter. Ah, my arm! The young man's face distorted as he cried out in pain, looking at his severed arm in disbelief. Before, he had said that he would let the other party cripple his own arm, but now the other party's arm was intact, while his own arm was cut off. This contrast made him furious. You actually dared to cut off my arm!" He looked at Gray with hatred. "Why wouldn't I dare?" Gray sneered. Since the Wallen family had already come knocking, what did he not dare to do? Chapter 324. "Don't worry, that was just the interest." Gray's eyes turned cold. Another icy wind blade appeared in front of him and headed straight for the young man's other arm. The young man's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly dodged to the side. However, with one of his arms cut off and being attacked by the cold air, even though he managed to break free from the ice on his body was no longer as nimble as before. Soon, his other arm was about to be cut off. Crack! Suddenly, more than 10 gigantic vines, each as thick as an adult's waist, appeared in front of the young man. They whipped out abruptly and broke the icy wind blade. Then, they headed straight for Gray. Gray's expression changed slightly. 5 icy wind blades slashed out and cut off the gigantic vines. Then, he looked around. Suddenly, a large number of plants grew wildly on the battlefield. Within a radius of 100 meters, the plants were twisting and turning wildly. The 4 barbaric-level blood fiends were temporarily blocked by these plants. The 2 elders took the opportunity to distance themselves and appeared in front of the young man. Both of them were injured when they were besieged by the 2 barbaric-level blood fiends. Even they were caught in a tough battle when they were besieged by 2 barbaric-level blood fiends. In the end, they had no choice but to use all of their plant abilities to break free from the siege. "You're so vicious." Seeing that the young man's right arm had been chopped off, the 2 elders' faces turned ashen. They stared coldly at Gray. "Why didn't you feel that you were vicious when you wanted to chop off my arm and destroy one of my eyes?" Gray sneered. When they wanted him to chop off his arm and blind his eyes, the 2 elders felt that it was only right and proper. Now that their own family's descendant had lost an arm, they suddenly felt vicious. As expected of members of a big family, they were so proficient in using double standard. "I admit that I underestimated the Fergus family. However, you chopped off the arm of a descendant of the Wallen family and cut off his future. Aren't you afraid that you'll become a mortal enemy of the Wallen family?" The skinny elder said coldly. "Your Wallen family has already planned to destroy my Fergus family. Is this not considered a mortal enemy?" Gray chuckled disdainfully. "Don't be too arrogant. Your Fergus family may be able to control 4 barbarian-level blood fiends, but the power of my Wallen family is not something you can imagine." Another old man said coldly. "The other party is stronger than us. Let's retreat for now." The skinny old man said with a gloomy face. "Just you wait. I won't let you off so easily this time." The young man was in so much pain that he broke out in a cold sweat. "Since you can't beat him, you want to leave just like that? Aren't you being too presumptuous?" Gray revealed a mocking smile. 4 barbarian-level blood fiends appeared around the 2 old men and the young man, faintly surrounding the 3 of them. Taking advantage of the time just now, the 4 barbarian-level blood fiends had already destroyed the vines. Are you trying to make us stay? Don't forget that the Wallen family is part of the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom. If you kill us, the royal family will not let you go. The young man and the 2 old men's expressions changed. The skinny old man tried to put on a strong front and said, "Don't worry, I won't kill you. I have no intention of becoming enemies with the royal family. However, I will make sure that today will leave a deep impression on you." Gray revealed his white teeth and said coldly. In the next moment, the 4 barbarian-level blood fiends surrounded the 3 of them. At the same time, Gray attacked the 3 of them. The 2 old men's faces turned gloomy. Vines grew out from their surroundings and intercepted the 4 barbarian-level blood fiends and Gray. Boom, boom, boom. The 4 barbarian-level blood fiends and Gray were not weaker than the barbarians. When they attacked together, their combat power was terrifying. Large patches of plants were smashed. The plants controlled by the 2 old men were destroyed as easily as dry weeds and rotten wood. Boom. The skinny old man could not dodge in time and was punched in the chest. He was instantly sent flying. When he landed on the ground, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Woo! An invisible shockwave hit the other old man and the young man. The old man was also sent flying as if he had been hammered by an invisible fist. He landed heavily on the ground and his body was covered with deep wounds. Even though the young man was protected by the old man, he was still sent flying. Many of his bones were broken. The 4 barbarian-level blood fiends took heavy steps and chased after the 3 of them like an army of thousands of horses. Gray followed behind the 4 barbarian-level blood fiends with a cold look in his eyes. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Seeing the 4 barbarian-level blood fiends chasing after them, the 2 old men's faces turned extremely grave. They looked at each other and suddenly released their plant ability. Then, a large number of vines grew out crazily. Each of them was as thick as a water bucket. It was as if tens of thousands of giant pythons had poured out of their nest and attacked Gray and the 4 barbarian-level blood fiends. Gray had no choice but to be cautious in the face of the 2 men's plant ability. He and the 4 barbarian-level blood fiends used all their strength to block the attacking vines. Fergus family, just you wait. Just you wait for the Wallen family's revenge. The Wallen family's old man's sinister voice came from behind the dense vegetation. Revenge? With your Wallen family's rune puppet that's comparable to a desolate level. Aren't you afraid that I'll sneak into Marquis Wallen's territory and wreak havoc? Your Wallen family can try. Gray snorted coldly. He was indeed afraid of the other party's rune puppet, but it did not mean that he was afraid of them. The other party's rune puppet could not move easily. If they wanted to drive it to attack the Fergus family, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. Before that happened, the Fergus family could receive the news and retreat. With the number of barbarian-level blood fiends that the Fergus family could control, even if the other party sent out 3 barbarian-level blood warriors, they would still be able to put up a fight. If the other party really dared to control the rune puppet to attack the Fergus family, he would probably wreak havoc in Wallen's territory. If you dare, my Wallen family will definitely not let you off. We'll definitely raze your Fergus family to the ground. The old man said coldly after being threatened by Gray. I also dare to guarantee that I'll definitely kill all the nobles of your Wallen family. Gray said without the slightest fear. There was no more sound behind the vines. After Gray and the 4 barbarian-level blood fiends destroyed all the vines, the 2 old men and the young man had already disappeared. They're really too arrogant. I really want to keep them all here, Bernal said angrily as he walked over. The battles in other places had already ended. We can only let them go. After all, they're nobles of the royal family. If we kill their direct descendants, the royal family will definitely stand up for them. Earl Fergus frowned and said helplessly, "They didn't try to hide anything on their way here. The news of them entering Fergus territory must be known by many people. If we kill them, there's no guarantee that the news won't leak out." Grey also frowned and said with some regret, although he was helpless, there was no other way. Who asked the other party to have such an insurmountable mountain behind them? The royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom was a terrifying power that had several king-level warriors overseeing it. It was something that Grey and the Fergus family couldn't afford to provoke. When Grey's strength reached that of a king-level warrior, he would have the ability to contend with this colossus. At that time, it wouldn't be too late for him to destroy the Wallen family. As for now, he absolutely couldn't afford to provoke this colossus. "Will the Wallen family attack again?" Bernal said worriedly. "They probably won't." Grey's words just now should have intimidated them. "They probably won't easily attack the Fergus family again." Earl Fergus shook his head and said, "But the Wallen family is very likely to have connections with the King of Assassins. Will the Wallen family ask the King of Assassins to attack the Fergus family?" Bernal still had a trace of worry on his face. "They won't. Someone like the King of Assassins would have to pay a huge price to get him to act. The Wallen family can't continuously take out things that are worth more than evolution herbs." Grey shook his head and then looked in a certain direction. His eyes were cold as he walked over. Earl Fergus and Bernal also walked over with cold expressions. In that direction, there were dozens of people with knives on their neck. These people were the nobles and soldiers that had betrayed the Fergus family. "Lord Earl, we were only momentarily blinded by greed. Please forgive us this time. Young Master Grey, I beg you to spare us." Seeing Grey and the other two walking over, the nobles and soldiers all begged for mercy. At this moment, their hearts were filled with bitterness. Who would have thought that the powerful Marquis family would be defeated by the Fergus family? In the end, only 3 people escaped. If they had known this would happen, they wouldn't have betrayed the Fergus family and joined the Wallen family. Shameless. Even now, you still have the nerve to beg for mercy? If I were you, I would just find a rock and kill myself. Lord Lind spat on the face of one of the lords, his face full of disdain. The other nobles all opened their mouths and shouted angrily. As nobles who had been enfeoffed by the Fergus family, they had actually betrayed the Fergus family. "Young Master Bernal, please put in a good word for us. We know that we were wrong. Please give us a chance to change. Young Master Bernal, please plead for mercy for the Carter family on account of our friendship of more than 10 years. We were only deceived by the Wallen family this time." "Shut up. Now you're thinking of our friendship of more than 10 years? Then why didn't you think of it just now?" Bernal scolded with a cold face, then looked at Earl Fergus and asked, "Father, what do you think we should do with these people and their families?" Earl Fergus didn't make a decision immediately. Instead, he looked at Grey and asked. Grey hated these traitors very much, so he immediately said, "I think we should kill all the members of the direct line of descent. If they didn't kill them all, there would be endless trouble in the future." Grey naturally understood this principle. Therefore, Grey had no intention of being merciful at all. He suggested killing all the members of the direct line of descent. "Okay, let's do that. None of the members of the direct line of descent should be spared." Following Earl Fergus's words, miserable screams sounded one after another. Those were the screams of the traitors and soldiers before they died. However, this was not the end. Today, the Fergus family would definitely shed a lot of blood. Chapter 325. Grey, Earl Fergus, and Bernal returned to Fergus Castle after killing all the traitorous nobles and soldiers and ordering a few other nobles, including Lord Lind, to exterminate the families of these nobles. It was the Wallen family that attacked? Hearing the news, Zeloyan and the others couldn't help but be shocked, and then their faces were filled with hatred. The place where the Fergus family and the Wallen family had fought was not far from the castle, and the huge commotion had already reached the castle. They had been worried about what kind of power the attack was, but they hadn't expected it to be the Wallen family. The Wallen family was very likely the culprit who had hired the King of Assassins to attack the Sidney family. They naturally hated this family that had caused them to be in such a miserable state. "They've already been beaten back?" Zaloyan asked with a grave expression. "They've been beaten back." Gray nodded. "Now that the Sidney family can't even protect themselves, they can't intimidate the Wallen family. Be careful of the Wallen family's rune puppet." Zaloyan warned cautiously. "We understand. The rune puppets cause a huge commotion. If they attack, they'll definitely be alerted in advance. With the teleportation magic weapon, we can easily hide." Gray said. "That's good." Zaloyan and the others sighed in relief. Indeed, with the teleportation magic weapon in Gray's hands, it would be very easy to avoid the Wallen family and escape. With the disappearance of the Sidney family, the nobles of Sidney Hill were all uneasy about their future. Many families began to contact the surrounding nobles. A day later, an important piece of news was sent to the Fergus family. The Smalley family had left Sidney Hill and become a viscount of the Orca family. They were the first nobles to leave Sidney Hill after the attack on Sidney Castle. "You traitor, you're in such a hurry to leave the Sidney family?" Zaloyan's face was full of anger. The Sidney family treated the Smalley family well. They actually became the first nobles to leave Sidney Hill. Darren clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. His eyes were full of anger. The Smalley family is too much. Even Polly, who had always been calm, had an angry expression on her face. Although the Sidney family had been attacked, nothing had been decided. The Smalley family was so eager to leave Sidney Hill and become the first nobles to leave Sidney Hill. No matter what, the Smalley family had gone too far. In the next few days, many nobles left Sidney Hill and joined the surrounding nobles. These nobles already had plans in this regard, and the Smalley family's departure had become the example for these noble families, allowing these nobles to put their plans into practice. During this time, Viscount Iveline visited the Fergus family and asked about the Fergus family's plans. The Fergus family had to take care of Bernal's wife's family. Although they didn't say that Zaloyan and his siblings were still alive, they did remind them not to make a decision too early. They had done what they could. It was up to them to decide what they would do in the end. Nobles left Sidney Hill one by one. At first, Zaloyan and his siblings were furious when they heard that a noble family had left Sidney Hill. Later, they got over it. It wasn't a bad thing for such a fence-sitter family to leave Sidney Hill. Finally, another important piece of news came. The investigation team sent by the royal family to investigate the attack on the Sidney family had finally arrived. The royal family is finally here. Upon hearing this news, Gray and the others, as well as Zero and the others, heaved a sigh of relief. Although they didn't find any traces of the King of Assassins' forces in Fergus Hill, they still couldn't help but worry that they would come looking for them. Now that the royal family was here, the King of Assassins' forces must have left Sidney Hill. They were completely safe. After finding out the temporary residence of the investigation team sent by the royal family, Gray took Zaloyan and the rest to the Fergus family's carriage and hurried there. They arrived at the temporary residence of the investigation team sent by the royal family and reported their identities. Gray, Zaloyan, and the rest met the investigation team sent by the royal family this time. The investigation team sent by the royal family was led by two people. One of them was an old man. His face was thin and his hair was white and sparse. He looked like an old man with half a foot in the grave, but Gray unexpectedly felt that he was extremely dangerous. Looking at him, Gray felt like he was facing the copper-backed dragon. The sense of danger he felt was even stronger than the copper-backed dragon. He even had goosebumps when the old man looked at him. The other person was a young man with purple hair. He was handsome and had a strong sense of authority. It was the aura of someone who had been in a high position for a long time. There was no doubt that this young man's identity was not simple. Prince Francis, Lord Reg, the way Zeloyan addressed the young man confirmed this. The young man was actually one of the princes of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. Gray had heard of this prince named Francis. He was the most talented and reputable prince among the princes of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. At such a young age, he already had the strength of a savage blood warrior. There were even rumors that he was already a desolate blood warrior. If there were no accidents, he would very likely inherit the throne of the Purple Moon Kingdom in the future. Zeloyan, it's really you. Francis clearly recognized Zeloyan. When he saw Zeloyan, he could not help but be surprised and happy. We were lucky to escape. We are the only ones left in the Sidney family. Zeloyan said with a sad expression. If not for the Fergus family risking their lives to save us, we might have all died. At this point, he looked at Gray gratefully. Francis Violet also looked at Gray. There was a hint of sizing him up and a hint of surprise in his eyes. An enemy who could attack the Sidney family must be extremely powerful. The other party was just a small noble and was actually willing to take the risk to save Zeloyan and the others. He could naturally imagine the risks involved. He looked at Zeloyan and asked in a low voice, "What kind of power did this?" As one of the 7 great Marquis family and theft by the royal family, the Sidney family had contributed greatly to the Purple Moon Kingdom for hundreds of years. Whether it was for the reputation of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family or the contributions of the Sidney family over the past hundreds of years, this matter had to be investigated thoroughly. "It's the King of Assassins," Zeloyan said through gritted teeth. "What, the King of Assassins?" Francis and the skinny old man beside him were shocked. Although they had guessed that the power behind the attack on the Sidney family was not small, they did not expect it to be so powerful that it was a king-class powerhouse. How did the Sidney family provoke the King of Assassins? The white-haired old man asked in shock. The Sidney family did not provoke the King of Assassins. The King of Assassins attacked the Sidney family because he was hired by another power. Zeloyan smiled bitterly. In the face of a high and mighty king-class powerhouse, the Sidney family could not wait to avoid him. Why would they provoke him? Hired by another power? Are you sure? Francis's eyes flashed coldly as he asked solemnly. The Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family usually turned a blind eye to the occasional conflicts between noble families as long as they did not go too far. On one hand, the royal family did not want the noble families to form factions. On the other hand, competition was a catalyst for strength growth. However, the current attempt to exterminate the Sidney family had exceeded the bottom line of the royal family's tolerance. The King of Assassins admitted it himself on the night of the attack on the Sidney castle. Zeloyan said with a serious expression. It seems that the royal family's indulgence has caused some families to forget themselves. Francis Violet's face turned cold, and his eyes were cold. Indeed, it's time to teach them a lesson. The white-haired old man nodded with a cold look in his eyes. The idea of exterminating the Sidney family had exceeded the limits of the royal family's tolerance. There's also the King of Assassins. He attacked the royal family 200 years ago and was hunted down by the royal family. Now he's reappeared and actually dared to accept such a mission. We must report this to the royal family. The royal family is deeply sorry for the Sidney family's misfortune. Don't worry, the royal family will give the Sidney family an explanation. Francis looked at Zeloyan and the others and said solemnly, "Thank you, Your Highness," and Sir Reg, Zeloyan and the others were emotional and grateful. With the royal family's words, there was hope for revenge. Now that the royal investigation team had arrived, the Sidney family's misfortune was finally over. They no longer had to hide in the dark basement. After bidding farewell to Francis and the white-haired old man, Gray, Zeloyan, and the others returned to Fergus Castle in a carriage. Along the way, Zhao Yuoyang and the others no longer hid their faces. They openly revealed their faces. Soon, the news that the 3 siblings of the Sidney family were not killed spread throughout the Sidney territory. After hearing the news, the nobles who were still in the Sydney territory heaved a sigh of relief. The Fergus family actually protected young Master Zeloyan and the others. No wonder they said those things back then. After hearing Fergus's advice, the Evelyns finally endured it. Now that they knew that the three siblings were not dead, they could not help but feel relieved. Some of the nobles who had left the Sydney family were regretting it. Among them, the Smalley family was the most regretful. How can this be? There are still people from the Sydney family alive? Did the Fergus family hide them? Damn it, why didn't the Fergus family reveal this earlier? The original Earl Smalley suddenly smashed the tea table with his fist, his face twisted in anger. Although he had successfully obtained the title and fief of the Oka family, it was only the title of Viscount. Compared to his original title, the title and fief were much smaller. It couldn't be compared to his previous title. Chapter 326. As the ruler of one of the four kingdoms, the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom possessed terrifying strength and resources. Once they were enraged, other than the royal families of the other three kingdoms, no other forces would be able to resist them. This time, because of the Sydney family incident, the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom was enraged. They hunted down the King of Assassins and his forces within the kingdom. After more than 10 days, news came that the subordinates of the King of Assassins, who had chased Zeloyan and the others until they had nowhere to run, had been found one by one. Among them, there were many berserker warriors, and there were even a few savage blood warriors. There was even a desolate blood warrior. However, in front of the powerful royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom, they were all wiped out. Even the desolate blood warrior was not spared. This is the strength of the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom? After hearing this news, Grey and Earl Fergus were both shocked. Fortunately, when the Wallen family attacked last time, they held back and did not kill the young man and the 2 elders of the Wallen family. Otherwise, the Fergus family might have been one of the forces wiped out. The King of Assassins' forces are indeed powerful, but the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom is even more powerful. Bernal sighed and could not help but feel a little worried. This time, we secretly saved the Sydney family. To a certain extent, we are standing on the opposite side of the King of Assassins. Now that we have been exposed, will we incur their revenge? Regardless of whether it was the Purple Moon Kingdom or the King of Assassins, to the Fergus family, they were unimaginably powerful forces. No matter which force it was, they could easily destroy the Fergus family. This time, the Fergus family had secretly saved Zeloyan and his siblings. If the King of Assassins held a grudge against them because of this, it would definitely be a disaster. Such an existence should not target a small family like ours. Earl Fergus shook his head, as if he was comforting himself. Grey went into deep thought. The biggest conflict between the Fergus family and the King of Assassins was that they had provided shelter for the Sydney family and his siblings, which caused the royal family to know that the King of Assassins had tried to assassinate the Sydney family. However, with the power and influence of the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom, even if the King of Assassins completely destroyed the Sydney family, the Purple Moon Kingdom would very likely trace it back to the King of Assassins. In this case, the Fergus family would have little effect in the matter of the King of Assassins and his subordinate forces being hunted down. They might not be hated by the King of Assassins. Of course, if the Fergus family appeared in front of the King of Assassins, the King of Assassins would probably slap them to death without hesitation. First, it was the Naeem family, and now it's the King of Assassins. Grey could not help but laugh bitterly. Whether it was the Nahum family or the King of Assassins, they were not people that he wanted to provoke. Unfortunately, due to various reasons, he had no choice but to provoke them. If he wanted to be fearless of these forces, the most effective way was to increase his power. Originally, he was already quite satisfied with the speed of his power increase. However, now, he could not help but feel a sense of urgency. The Nahum family and the King of Assassins were 2 huge mountains that were pressing on his head, and one was bigger than the other. More than 10 days passed, and there was more news. After the King of Assassins attacked the Sydney castle, he had already gone into hiding. Obviously, he had already predicted that the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom would target him, so he had already gone into hiding. However, the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom was even more powerful. Even if the King of Assassins had already gone into hiding, they still managed to find him through some means. A total of 2 king-level powerhouses started to hunt down the King of Assassins. Even with the King of Assassins' strength, he was inevitably severely injured. Along the way, the King of Assassins was almost killed several times. However, he still managed to escape and escaped into the Flame Kingdom. With the relationship between the Flame Kingdom and the Purple Moon Kingdom, it was obvious that they would not allow the 2 king-level powerhouses of the Purple Moon Kingdom to enter their territory. Although the 2 king-level powerhouses were unwilling, they could only give up on hunting down the King of Assassins. The King of Assassins escaped? How could it be? Even the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom could not kill the King of Assassins. Zero and his siblings did not look too good. Their faces were full of disappointment. Originally, they thought that with the royal family's help, they would be able to kill the King of Assassins. However, they did not expect him to escape in the end. He really escaped. Gray muttered to himself. Previously, he had guessed that even the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom would not be able to kill the King of Assassins. Now, the results had confirmed his guess. The King of Assassins had successfully escaped from the hunt. The royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom was not weak. They were actually able to send 2 king-level powerhouses to hunt down the King of Assassins. Moreover, it was very likely that these were not all of their king-level powerhouses. The King of Assassins was not weak either. He was close to 300 years old, and his strength had undergone a metamorphosis above the king-level foundation. Both parties were extremely strong. The strongest party was naturally the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom. However, although the King of Assassins was not a match for them, he still managed to escape with his life from the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Although he escaped, it's fortunate that he was injured and chased out of the Purple Moon Kingdom. The only fortunate thing was that the King of Assassins was severely injured and chased out of the Purple Moon Kingdom. In this case, they should not have to worry about the King of Assassins' threat for a short period of time. Although I expected this, I still feel a little unsatisfied. After a while, Zaloyan smiled bitterly. It had been a long time since the attack on the Sydney family, so they had gradually calmed down. After calming down, they naturally had a rough idea of the possibility of the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom killing the King of Assassins. Although they had already expected the King of Assassins to escape, they could not help but feel disappointed when they heard the news. The King of Assassins isn't the culprit. The real culprit is the faction that hired the King of Assassins. That's the Sydney family's biggest enemy. Master Tulu sighed and said, "Yes, the one that hired the King of Assassins is the real culprit," Darren said with a cold expression. What he hated the most now was not the King of Assassins, but the faction that hired the King of Assassins. That was the real culprit that caused the attack on the Sydney family. I wonder how the royal family's investigation is going? There hasn't been any news regarding this. Polly frowned and said. Another dozen days later, the royal family sent news. The one that hired the King of Assassins to attack the Sydney family was the president of the Black Gold Merchant Guild. Before the royal family took action, the president had already committed suicide by consuming poison. How could it be the Black Gold Merchant Guild? Regardless of whether it was Gray or Zero's group, none of them believed this outcome. The president of a merchant guild had the ability to obtain precious evolution herbs and use them to hire the King of Assassins. No matter how they looked at it, it was very strange. However, the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom's investigation would not be wrong. In other words, it was indeed this person who hired the King of Assassins to attack the Sydney family. The Sidney family knows about the Black Gold Merchant Guild? Gray asked in bewilderment. No, the Sidney family has never dealt with the Black Gold Merchant Guild. They don't even know about the existence of such a merchant guild. Zeloyan shook his head. The president of the Black Gold Merchant Guild must have been instructed by another faction. Earl Fergus said. The Wallen family. It must be the Wallen family who instructed the president of the Black Gold Merchant Guild. Darren's face was ashen. With the death of the president of the Black Gold Merchant Guild, there are no more clues. It will be very difficult to trace this matter back to the Wallen family. Gray frowned. The royal family should be able to guess that it was the Wallen family, but there are no more clues. The royal family can't just make a move against the Wallen family based on guesses. Zeloyan's eyes revealed a cold, killing intent. That's good too. We should take revenge for our own family. I don't have any hope for the king of assassins, but the Wallen family, our Sidney family, will not let them off. Yes, we will take revenge for ourselves. Darren's eyes were also filled with determination. He had always been at odds with Zeloyan, but after experiencing the Sidney family's calamity, he had long since given up on his enmity with Zeloyan. Now, only the three of them were left in the Sidney family. He knew very well that if they could not unite, it would be impossible for the Sidney family to rise again. Yes, we will take revenge for our family. Seeing that her eldest brother and second brother had buried the hatchet, Polly's eyes were filled with both excitement and regret. She was excited to finally see the two of them bury the hatchet, but regretful that her father and mother would never be able to see this scene. Gray, I have a favor to ask of you. Zeloyan looked at Gray with a solemn expression. Young Master Zeloyan, please speak. As long as it is within my power, I will not refuse. Seeing the solemn expression on Zeloyan's face, Gray said firmly. I would like you to escort us to the royal capital. Zeloyan said. To the royal capital? Gray looked at Zeloyan in confusion. Yes, to the royal capital. Zeloyan nodded. Although the royal family already knows that the three of us are still alive in the Sidney family, to inherit the title, you must personally make a trip to the royal capital, and within a year. If you exceed this time, you will be considered to have given up your right to inherit the title. I am worried that the Wallen family will interfere. Currently, in the Sidney territory, only you have the strength to contend with the Wallen family, so I request that you escort us to the royal capital. No problem. Without much consideration, Gray nodded in agreement. If the Sidney family could not inherit the title, the Fergus family would also lose their title and fief. Whether it was to help the Sidney family or for the Fergus family, he had to make a trip to the royal capital. Moreover, he had long been curious about the royal capital of the Purple Moon Kingdom, the most prosperous city in the entire professional kingdom. This time, he could use this opportunity to take a look. Chapter 327. A carriage without a family insignia drove out of the Fergus family castle. Zero, his siblings, and Gray were in the carriage. Master Tulu didn't follow, as he chose to stay with the Fergus family. Apart from the coachman, there were no other guards. It was naturally better to be as inconspicuous as possible on this trip to the royal capital. With Gray's current level, ordinary guards wouldn't be of any use against the enemies they were going to face. On the contrary, they would only draw attention and become a burden. Thus, they chose not to bring any guards with them. A few days later, they left the Sidney territory and entered Marquis Orca's territory. Along the way, they were extremely low-key, and even the clothes they wore were extremely ordinary in order to not attract attention. Unfortunately, they were still noticed after entering the Sidney territory. Lord Marquis, Gray Fergus severely injured me, causing me to rest for a few months before recovering. Lord Marquis, please seek justice for me. In the living room of Valin Castle, an old man in his 50s with light brown hair spoke with grief and indignation. He was the head of the Mesfi family who had been severely injured by Gray. He actually attacked a noble of the Orca family and seriously injured him. He was indeed too ruthless. Marquis Orca was an old man with a round face and a mustache. He had a slightly angry expression on his face as he spoke sternly. He naturally didn't just know that Earl Mesfi had been severely injured a few months ago. He had already known about it from the very beginning. It was just that Grey had the powerful Sidney family behind him at that time, and the Sidney family's marquis had even driven the copperback dragon past his territory. He naturally didn't dare to stand up for the Mesfi family. Now that Earl Mesfi had brought up the matter again, and the Sidney family was no longer what it used to be. He also felt aggrieved that he had been frightened by the Sidney family last time, so he changed his mind. 2 days later, accompanied by the rumbling sound of horse hooves, a group of over 100 people blocked the path of Grey's carriage. "Grey Fergus, come out!" The old man at the front stared coldly at the carriage and loudly shouted. "It's you!" Grey, Zero, and Young walked out of the carriage. Seeing the person who had spoken, Grey raised his eyebrows and spoke. "Looks like the lesson I taught you last time wasn't enough. You actually dare to appear in front of me again." The person who had spoken was the head of the Mesfi family. "Humph, someone who's about to die still dares to be so arrogant." Thinking of the grievance of being seriously injured by Grey, the family head's expression turned gloomy as he said coldly, I'll break you, the old man who had been the Fergus a few days. The old marquis of the families, the old marquis of the families, s to the face twos to assess is, s to twos to the martois. This was a slightly plump old man dressed in black. His eyes were small, but there was a sharp glint in them. "You're indeed arrogant. You don't even know how to restrain yourself in my Orca territory." Looking at Grey, the plump old man spoke coldly with his hands behind his back. "Greetings, Grandpa Dave." Seeing the old man, Zero raised his eyebrows and stepped forward. "You're Zero from the Sidney family?" The chubby old man glanced at Zhaoyang and recognized his identity. "Yes, Grandpa Dave. The conflict between the Mesfi family and Grey wasn't Grey's fault. I hope Grandpa Dave can let him off." Zero lowered his stance and spoke. The Orca family had complained to the Sidney family about Grey injuring Earl Mesfi. However, after understanding the situation, the Sidney family naturally ignored their complaints. I don't need you to judge for me. Seeing that your Sidney family has a good relationship with my Orca family, you can leave." Dave snorted coldly. "As for him, you don't have to care about him. If I don't kill him, the Orca family will lose face. If it was the Sidney family of the past, he wouldn't have dared to disrespect them. Unfortunately, the Sidney family only had 3 members now. The copperback dragon that they relied on had been killed. Naturally, he didn't care about the Sidney family." Zero's face turned pale. Although he knew that the Sidney family no longer had the prestige they had in the past, he didn't expect them to be so merciless. "Kill me? You think you can?" Grey looked at the old man from the Orca family with a strange expression. During the battle with the Wallen family, he had used 4 barbarian-level blood fiends. The Wallen family had 2 barbarian blood warriors, 4 berserk blood warriors, and many ferocious blood warriors, but they were no match for him. Now, the old man was alone, yet he dared to say that he wanted to kill him. Was he powerful, or did he not know that Zero could control 4 barbarian-level blood fiends? However, the old man was only a member of the Marquis family. Furthermore, he could only be ranked below average in the Marquis family. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have the strength of a desolate blood warrior. Darren and Polly also looked at the old man with angry and strange expressions. They were angry that the old man looked down on the Sidney family, and strange that he wanted to kill Grey alone. As for the 100 or so people behind the old man, they could naturally see that there weren't any powerful blood warriors among them. Let's not talk about the fact that the Fergus family didn't bring the barbarian-level blood fiend here. Even if they did, they wouldn't be Lord Diff's match. Earl Mesfi's eyes flashed with a sinister glint. Lord Diff, this person is too arrogant. He doesn't even take you seriously. Humph. The slightly plump old man was also furious. A young man in his early 20s actually dared to speak to him in such a manner. He couldn't help but feel his anger rising. With a cold snort, a terrifying winding lightning bolt suddenly appeared in front of him. It emitted a bluish-white glow, like a terrifying lightning bolt falling from a thunderstorm, and attacked Gray. Gray's expression didn't change, and he didn't make any movements. However, two gigantic blood fiends had already appeared in front of him. One of them was 7 meters tall and had a humanoid form. It was the iron-armed barbarian ape. The other was 5 meters long and had a black carapace all over its body. It seemed to be made of black metal and had a metallic texture. Boom! The two gigantic arms of the iron-armed barbarian ape transformed into a gigantic shield and blocked the bluish-white lightning bolt. With a loud bang, the iron-armed barbarian ape retreated continuously. However, its iron arms were still intact, and there were no traces of scorch marks. At the same time, the brute force ant used its 8 legs to quickly crawl toward the slightly plump old man. The black carapace all over its body made it look like a sturdy armored vehicle. The gigantic mouthpart on its head constantly rubbed against each other, emitting a hair-raising sound. No one doubted its sharpness. A large-scale rune space bag, and you can actually control 2 barbarian-level blood fiends. Seeing the sudden appearance of the blood fiends in front of Gray, the slightly plump old man's expression changed slightly. After taking a closer look at the 2 blood fiends, his expression completely changed. Fong Xinjian had a large-scale rune space bag and could carry blood fiends around with him. Moreover, he could actually control 2 barbarian-level blood fiends. Seeing the brute force ant charging toward him like a steel chariot, the slightly plump old man shot out a bluish-white lightning bolt and blasted the brute force ant away. However, at this moment, he actually saw a gigantic fist rapidly hammering toward him. Without much time to think, he drew his saber and slashed. Clang! The saber slashed down, but it was as if it had hit a steel plate. He couldn't force the gigantic beast to retreat, and he couldn't even leave a wound on the gigantic fist. Clang, clang, clang. The saber and the gigantic fist collided several times, but there was still no wound on the gigantic fist. At this moment, the brute force ant that had been blasted away by the lightning bolt got up again and charged toward him. Although there was a scorch mark on the opponent's body, it was obviously not serious. A bolt of lightning forced the iron-armed barbarian ape back, and he narrowly avoided the brute force ant's attack. You have a large-scale rune space bag? Not far away, Master Mesfi's expression completely changed. He looked at Gray in horror. When he saw Gray walking toward him, he couldn't help but retreat in fear. Just now, you said that you would break all the bones in my body and torture me to death? Grim grinned, revealing his white teeth. How can you control 2 barbarian-level blood fiends? Master Mesfi's expression changed again and again. He knew that he wasn't a match for Gray. His biggest reliance was the barbarian blood warrior from the Orca family. Now that the barbarian blood warrior was entangled by 2 barbarian-level blood fiends, he was completely at a disadvantage and couldn't even protect himself. How could he possibly have the ability to save him? Attack him together with me. Besiege him. He clenched his teeth and loudly ordered the more than 100 people who followed him. Meanwhile, he made the soil and stones splatter, and a large amount of soil gathered into a gigantic earth snake that attacked Gray. Although he wasn't a match for Grim, he wasn't alone now. There were more than 100 people, and they weren't strong enough. He didn't believe that he couldn't defeat Grim. For a moment, the gigantic earth snake rushed to the front. Several other blood fiends' abilities mixed together and attacked Gray together. There were also more than 100 people who rushed toward Gray with weapons in their hand. Faced with the blood fiend's abilities and more than 100 people's attacks, Gray sneered. In front of him, 5 icy wind blades were slashed out. Puff, puff, puff. The 5 icy wind blades were like 5 divine weapons. They shattered the incoming blood fiend's abilities, and continued on their way towards the 100 or so people. Those who stood in front of the icy wind blades were cut in half without exception. Some people were even cut in half along with their weapons. After the 5 icy wind blades, more than half of the more than 100 people who rushed toward Gray were dead. The ground was full of broken corpses and ice sculptures. Those who were lucky enough to survive were first stunned, then frightened, and all of them turned around and fled. Among them, the head of the Mesfi family was at the front. Just now, after attacking the earth snake, he, as a berserker, intentionally fell behind the group. Gray's expression was cold. He looked at the head of the Mesfi family, who was running at the front. An icy wind blade swiftly shot out in front of him. Puff! The head of the Mesfi family, who was running at the front, suddenly felt a chill in his left leg. A sharp pain came. He lowered his head and saw that his left leg was broken from the thigh. There was also a terrifying chill spreading across his body. With a thud, he turned into an ice sculpture and smashed onto the ground like a stone. Chapter 328. Run, run quickly. The people who had besieged Gray were frightened out of their wits. They fled frantically with faces full of horror. There were more than 100 people, including the head of the Mesfi family, but under the attack of the other party, almost half of them died in an instant. They were completely scared out of their wit. Unfortunately, it was easier said than done to escape from Gray. Swish, swish, swish. The icy wind blades were like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Every time an icy wind blade slashed, a few people would be killed. Some were directly hit by the icy wind blades and were split into 2 halves. Some were invaded by the cold air and were directly frozen to death. A few people with the strength of a ferocious warrior wanted to resist, but it was futile. Their blood fiend's abilities were easily shattered like glass in front of the icy wind blades. More than 10 icy wind blades slashed past. Other than those who were frozen to death, no one was able to stand. Crack! The head of the Mesfi family struggled with all his might and finally broke free from the ice on his body. Pa, pa, pa. At this moment, he heard footsteps behind him approaching at a moderate pace. The footsteps were not loud, but they made him panic and frightened. It was as if the person walking towards him was not a person, but a huge barbarian-level blood fiend. His left leg was broken, so he could not stand at all. He could only crawl forward with both hands, leaving behind a drag trail. He was indeed a ferocious warrior. Even if he was crawling, his speed was extremely fast. His figure was crawling further and further away. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Didn't you want to break all the bones in my body? Gray's expression was ice-cold. In front of him, another icy wind blade whizzed out. The head of the Mesfi family's expression changed. He turned over and dodged to the side, but the icy wind blade was too fast. Pop! His right hand was cut off at the wrist and flew high into the air. His whole body was frozen again. Gray walked to the head of the Mesfi family step by step at a moderate pace and looked down at him with a cold expression. Last time, because he was afraid of the Orca family, he had only severely injured him and did not kill him. But this time, he was not going to hold back. Now, his strength was several times stronger than before. The only families that could make him afraid were those that were ranked at the top of the Marquis family. As for the Orca family, which was ranked at the bottom of the Marquis family, he was not afraid at all. Crack! Breaking free from the ice on his body once again, the head of the Mesfi clan was trembling all over. It was unknown whether it was because he was scared or because he was cold. You can't kill me." He raised his head and met Gray's cold gaze. He tried to put on a strong front. "You want to kill me, so why can't I kill you?" Gray looked at him playfully. "I'm an Earl of the Orca family. If you kill me, the Orca family will never let you off." At the mention of the Orca family, The head of the Mesfi clan became more confident and threatened. "Do you think the Orca family can do anything to me?" Gray looked in a direction. In that direction, the chubby old man of the Orca family was fighting with two barbarian-level blood fiends. Under the siege of the two barbarian-level blood fiends, the chubby old man of the Orca family was in a perilous situation. He was at a complete disadvantage. The clothes on his body were tattered, and he was not much better than a beggar. One of his arms was hanging down weakly. It looked like it was fractured. Seeing the miserable state of the chubby old man of the Orca family, the head of the Mesfi clan narrowed his eyes. His heart was palpitating. The old man of the Orca family was indeed not a match for the two barbarian-level blood fiends. However, he still pretended to be confident and said, "Are you sure you want to be enemies with the Orca family? The background of the Marquis family is not something you can imagine. Do you think that the Orca family only has one barbarian blood warrior? I won't underestimate the Orca family that much." Gray smiled and shook his head, then said, "But if the Orca family really wants to avenge you, I don't mind fighting with them." Gray waved his left hand, which was wearing a purple metal ring. Suddenly, the two giant blood fiends appeared again. One of them was a fanged boar with black fur, and was as big as a small hill. One of them was a ghost blade mantis that was green all over and had two exaggeratedly huge sabers. The two giant blood fiends were released from the space by Gray. Immediately, they moved their huge bodies and strode towards the place where the battle was still ongoing. You can actually control the barbarian-level blood fiends." Seeing the appearance of the two barbarian-level blood fiends, the stubbornness on Master Mesfi's face collapsed like a weathered rock. His face was lifeless, and only despair was left in his heart. The Orca family indeed had more than one barbarian blood warrior, but the other party could also control more than two barbarian-level blood fiends. Faced with the other party who could control 4 barbarian-level blood fiends, would the Orca family still stand up for him? He felt that things were not going well. "Don't kill me, I was wrong, I was wrong." When he judged that even the Orca family wouldn't be able to protect him, at this moment, he became completely flustered. "Don't you think it's too late now?" Gray sneered. "If you didn't come looking for me, I wouldn't have bothered with you. Now that you've come looking for me, do you think I'll let you go? You'll die a horrible death. I'll fight with you." Master Mesfi's face became ferocious because of his despair. Suddenly, a yellow giant snake rose up and attacked Gray. At the same time, his body, which was lying on the ground, suddenly jumped up and pounced on Gray. The target of the earth snake's attack was not only Gray, but also himself. In desperation, he finally decided to fight with his life on the line. Faced with Master Mesfi's desperate attack, Gray remained calm. A wind blade slashed out in front of him like a boning knife, splitting the earth snake into 2 halves from head to toe. The sword in his hand was surrounded by lightning, and he stabbed it toward Master Mesfi's chest. The lightning sword pierced through Master Mesfi's chest. Master Mesfi's eyes were wide open, and his face was filled with hatred as he stared at Gray. Gray did not seem to care. He swung his sword and threw Master Mesfi's corpse away. 4 barbarian-level blood fiends. He can actually control 4 barbarian-level blood fiends. Seeing that 2 more barbarian-level blood fiends were attacking him, the face of the slightly plump elder from the Orca family turned as pale as a sheet of paper. 2 barbarian-level blood fiends had already forced him into a dangerous situation. Now that 2 more barbarian-level blood fiends joined the fray, how could he be a match for them? Crackle! 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 Numerous lightning bolts shot out toward the iron-armed barbarian apes and the brute force ant. Bang! Bang! Under the sudden explosion of the terrifying lightning, the 2 blood fiends were sent flying. His face lit up, and he turned to flee without hesitation. If he was surrounded by 4 barbarian-level blood fiends, he would definitely die. Woo! At this moment, a humming sound was heard. Then, he felt his eardrums vibrate violently. An invisible force came and slammed into his body. He was sent flying and crashed heavily onto the ground. His body was covered with scratches, and his clothes were almost torn to shreds. Faint traces of blood seeped out of his ears, which were caused by the terrifying sound waves. Whoosh! He got up from the ground, and the shock on his face deepened. He did not have time to check his injuries. Instead, he found a direction and turned to flee. He originally thought that he was just a member of the Earl's family that he could easily deal with. He did not expect that the other party would have such a powerful demonic weapon and could control 4 barbarian-level blood fiends to fight for him. The brute force ants ran with their 8 legs and blocked his path. He hurriedly moved to the side. Suddenly, a fist that was as thick as a water tank came crashing down from the side. He could not dodge in time and was directly hit by the fist. His body was sent flying again. His chest, which was hit by the huge fist, was badly mutilated. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Enduring the intense pain, he got up from the ground. At this moment, a huge jade-green praying mantis swung its 2 huge sickles and pounced on him. Under the siege of the 4 barbarian-level blood fiends, the wounds on his body kept increasing. He unleashed his blood fiend ability again, but he still could not break through the siege of the 4 barbarian-level blood fiends. Gray, the other party, is a member of the Oka Marquis family. If you kill him, you will definitely incur the wrath of the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Although they already knew that Gray had made a deal with a mysterious existence and upgraded his original magic weapon, allowing him to control 4 barbaric-level blood fiends, when they saw Gray controlling 4 barbaric-level blood fiends with their own eyes, Zero and his siblings still couldn't help but feel a little apprehensive. The strength that Gray displayed today was not much different from that of an ordinary member of the Marquis family. Even if there was a slight difference, it would not be too big. Faced with such an opponent, there would be very few members of the Marquis family who would be willing to become enemies with him. After all, even if they could kill him, they would have to pay a huge price. I won't kill him. Gray shook his head. Naturally, he had no intention of standing on the opposite side of the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom. What he wanted to do was to teach the other party an unforgettable lesson. After a while, the slightly plump old man from the Orca family was covered in wounds. Many of his bones were broken. He struggled on the ground for a while, but he could not get up immediately. The ground around him was filled with his blood. Orca family, if you want to avenge the Mesfi family, you better think carefully. Next time, I will not be so gentle. After shooting a cold glance at the old man, Gray turned around and returned to the carriage. He signaled the coachman to drive the carriage away. A few days later, Gray and the others had already left the Marquis of Orca territory. The Orca family did not come for revenge. They were obviously intimidated by the strength that Gray had displayed. Obviously, the Orca family did not have the determination to kill Gray at the cost of their own lives. Thump, thump, thump. The carriage traveled through the desolate wilderness. Suddenly, the earth quaked and the mountains swayed. In the distance, a giant creature that was more than 10 meters tall was striding towards them. Chapter 329. The gigantic object was golden all over and shone with a metallic luster. Its metallic surface was covered in dense dark golden patterns, all of which were faintly glowing. It had 2 legs and 2 hands in the shape of a human. With every step it took, the ground shook violently and even caved in. It was as if an ancient giant had walked out of history. A rune puppet. Leaping off the carriage, Gray, Zero, and the other 2 could not help but turn solemn at the sight of this gigantic object. Although the 4 of them had never seen the Wallen family's rune puppet, they were almost certain that this was the Wallen family's rune puppet with the strength of a wild blood warrior. With rune puppet technology on the wane, almost no runemaster could refine such a gigantic rune puppet. It could only be found in the ruins of the Empire. Even if they searched the entire Purple Moon Kingdom, there should not be too many of them. It could not be a coincidence that it belonged to another family. And the person sitting on the rune puppet's shoulder confirmed their conjecture. This was a skinny old man with a face full of wrinkles. Gray and Zero knew this person, especially Gray, who had interacted with this old man no less than 3 times. This person was one of the 3 wild blood warriors of the Wallen family. His name should be Ralph Wallen. Gray had heard Marnell Sidney call him that before. On the formation puppet, the old man's gaze was cold as he stared at Gray, revealing a set of large yellow teeth that were almost half missing. Then, he looked at Zero and the other 2 and spoke in a forceful tone. The Sidney family has met with a great calamity. Marquis Wallen is deeply regretful and has specially asked me to invite the 3 of you to the Wallen family as guests. Many thanks for the Marquis' good intentions, but the 3 of us still have matters to attend to, so we can only apologetically decline. Zero's expression did not change as he declined. Are you rejecting the Wallen family's good intentions? The skinny old man's expression turned cold as he spoke with dissatisfaction. Although we are very grateful for the Wallen family's invitation, the 3 of us do indeed have matters to attend to, so we can only decline. Soroyan said. Is that so? That's a pity. Since you are indeed busy, the Wallen family won't force you. A strange smile suddenly appeared on the shriveled old man's face. His gaze shifted from Zero and the other 2 to Gray. You little bastard! How dare you injure a member of my Wallen family? I'll skin you alive this time. This time, on one hand, he wanted to stop Zero and his siblings from going to the capital. On the other hand, he wanted to take revenge for the loss he suffered at the hands of the Fergus family. A direct descendant of the Wallen family had his arm chopped off and was almost crippled. Apart from the Sidney family, the Wallen family had never suffered such a huge loss. If they didn't take revenge, the Wallen family wouldn't be the Wallen family. These 2 things seemed to be the same thing, but in fact they were the same thing. Zero and his siblings were now relying on the Fergus family and the magic weapon in the Fergus family's possession. They only needed to kill this descendant of the Fergus family and seize the magic weapon. There were too many ways to deal with the remaining 3 Sidney family siblings. What? You won't release those 4 barbaric-level blood fiends? If they join forces, they might even be able to defeat this rune puppet of the Wallen family. He stared at Gray with a sinister smile on his face. He looked at Gray like a cat playing with a mouse. Faced with the other party's sinister gaze, the corners of Gray's mouth curled up slightly. Looks like you didn't take my previous words to heart. Humph, you think you can threaten my Wallen family? Do you think you can escape? The shriveled old man laughed disdainfully and said coldly, After I kill you, I'll make a trip to the Fergus family and send them to accompany you in death. Gray's expression suddenly turned cold, and a cold glint appeared in his eyes. I'll warn you again. You're not allowed to make a move against the Fergus family. Otherwise, I'll kill you even if you're a direct descendant of the Wallen family. Do you think you can escape? The shriveled old man sneered as he sat on the giant rune puppet's shoulder and looked at Gray mockingly. Looks like your brain isn't working too well. Fine, it's time to send you on your way. Abruptly, the gigantic formation puppet that was over 10 meters tall began to move. Every step it took was over 10 meters, and a palm that was even larger than a millstone extended towards Gray. It seemed slow, but in reality its speed was extremely fast. This was a giant iron palm, enormous and powerful. Many enemies had been crushed into meat paste by this iron palm, including barbaric blood warriors. The shriveled old man could already imagine the scene of his opponent being crushed into meat paste. Boom! A deep hole was dug into the ground by this claw. Within the iron palm of the formation puppet, a piece of soil, under the pressure of the pressure, turned into mud fragments and scattered. However, there was no sign of Gray in the scattered soil, nor was there any trace of blood. Where did he go? On the rune puppet, the shriveled old man's mocking gaze was stunned. He looked around, but he couldn't find Gray at all. Not only Gray, but even Zero and the other two, as well as the carriage and coachman, had disappeared. How can this be? The shriveled old man looked around in a daze. The people in front of him had all disappeared in an instant. Could this be teleportation? After a while, he thought of a guess. His expression changed again and again, and his face was filled with disbelief. Not only did the other party possess a magical weapon that could control 4 barbaric-level blood fiends, but he also possessed a magical weapon with the ability to teleport. But how could this be? Regardless of whether it was a magical weapon that could control 4 barbaric-level blood fiends or a magical weapon with the ability to teleport, they were all precious magical weapons that were not inferior to silver-level magical weapons. Even the Wallen family did not have one. How could a mere count family of the Sidney family possibly have one? And there were actually 2 of them. Hundreds of miles away, in a dense forest, a carriage and several people appeared on a purple formation pattern. It was Gray and his party, who had activated the teleportation ability. The Wallen family actually used a rune puppet. Zero's expression was slightly grave. He hadn't expected that the Wallen family would even use a rune puppet to prevent the Sidney family from entering the royal capital. Fortunately, Gray has a magical weapon with the ability to teleport. Otherwise, we would have been in danger, Polly said with lingering fear. Although the other party had only said that they wanted to deal with Gray and not the 3 siblings, she could not imagine what they would do after killing Gray. Without the protection of Gray's magical weapon, the 3 of them, who were the strongest among them, were merely berserkers. The other party had too many ways to deal with them. They did not even need to personally act. They only needed to hire a few large bandit groups to deal with them. It's not so easy. I'm afraid the other party will continue to block our path. Gray raised his eyebrows. Although they had evaded the rune puppet, they had retreated hundreds of miles. If the other party continued to block their path, they would not be able to pass at all. Although the ability to teleport could allow one to move across space, it required a set of coordinates in advance. Therefore, it was obviously impossible to teleport through the area where the rune puppet was located. We can only take a detour. It would be best to travel on foot through some hidden forest, Zero said after some thought. That's the only way. Gray nodded. Now they could only see if they could use this method to break through the obstruction of the rune puppet. Letting the driver drive the carriage back to the Fergus family, Gray and the other 3 took out a map. After careful consideration, they chose the route that passed through the most dense forest. Following the dense forest, they were already far away from the place where they had last encountered the rune puppet after a few days. The 4 of them breathed a sigh of relief and continued forward. But after a day, thump, 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 suddenly there was a huge commotion behind them. The 4 of them could not help but change their expressions as they turned to look behind them. A huge creature, more than 10 meters tall, was striding over. Its pace was not fast, but its speed was extremely fast. Every step it took was more than 10 meters. Along the way, trees were snapped and large chunks of mountain rock were destroyed. Nothing could stop its advance. This was the huge puppet of the Wallen family. Not good, it's coming. How did Wallen know we were here? The expressions of Gray and the others changed, but they quickly thought of the reason. There should be someone in the Wallen family who is adept at tracking. They looked behind the rune puppet and saw that it was no longer just the skinny old man, but more than 10 people following it. There must be someone adept at tracking among these people. Thump, thump, thump. The rune puppet walked through the forest like a giant. Some of the trees were not even as tall as the rune puppet. Whoosh! Without hesitation, Gray activated his spatial teleportation ability. His figure flashed as he brought the 3 siblings back to the place they had passed through earlier. How did the Wallen family track us? Darren was puzzled. Logically speaking, we escaped through spatial teleportation without leaving behind any scent or traces. Even if they had someone adept at tracking, they should not have been able to track us. They must have sent several tracking teams to search the routes we must pass through and found the traces we left behind," Polly said with a frown. Fortunately, the spatial teleportation point was not discovered by them. Otherwise, we would have been in danger. Cold sweat appeared on Gray's forehead. If the spatial teleportation coordinates were discovered and destroyed, even if his ring had the spatial teleportation ability, he would not be able to activate it. At that time, they would really be in danger. Without the spatial teleportation ability, facing a rune puppet whose strength was comparable to a desolate blood warrior, he would almost certainly die. Chapter 330. What do we do now? Polly raised her eyebrows. Continue to change route. Although the enemy has sent out several teams to search for us, it will definitely take some time for them to catch up to us. This time is enough for us to close the distance between us and the capital, Zoloyan said after some thought. Let's do that. We only need to chase a few times, and we should be able to reach the capital. Gray nodded his head in agreement. As for the problem of retreat, there's no need to worry. I will set up teleportation points in many hidden places. Even if the enemy destroys a few, there will be other teleportation points. After deciding, Gray's group of 4 continued on their journey. A long chase began. 2 days later, when Gray's group of 4 was traveling on a small country road, the skinny old man chased after them with his formation puppet. Activating spatial teleportation, Gray's group of 4 disappeared from the small country road, appearing in a hidden forest where they had previously set up a teleportation point. They chose a new route and set off. 3 days later, Gray's group of 4 was traveling along a river. The skinny old man once again chased after them with his formation puppet. Gray's group once again activated spatial teleportation to escape, choosing a new route and setting off once more. 2 days later, Gray's group of 4 was traveling over a mountain. The skinny old man once again chased after them with his formation puppet. Gray's group activated spatial teleportation to escape, choosing a new route and setting off once more. With each chase, Gray's group was getting closer and closer to the capital. In at most 4 or 5 days, they would be able to enter the palace. In a wilderness, the Wallen family was resting in a camp. After the continuous chase, Gray's group of 4 was unbearably tired. The Wallen family was also the same, perhaps even more tired than Gray's group. After all, the delicate work of searching was extremely exhausting. My lord, we can't continue like this. The distance between the enemy and the capital is constantly closing. A middle-aged man came before the skinny old man, Ralph Wallen, and said worriedly. Ralph Wallen naturally knew that if this continued, Gray's group would definitely get closer and closer to the capital, eventually entering it. But at present there was no effective method to stop this. He looked at the middle-aged man and asked, "Do you have any good suggestions?" "My lord, I suggest we take a gamble," the middle-aged man said. "What do you mean?" Ralph Wallen asked doubtfully. "Since we can't stop them, why don't we set up an ambush in front of them and take the opportunity to launch a sneak attack? But we don't know which route they will take." Ralph Wallen frowned. "That's why we need to take a gamble. After all, if this continues, we definitely won't be able to stop them." After some consideration, Ralph Wallen made a decision. "All right, let's do it." 2 days later, Gray's group was only 2 days away from the royal city. Something's not right. The Wallen family hasn't appeared for days. Gray had a vague feeling of unease. It is indeed a little strange. Logically speaking, the other party should have already tracked us down and chased after us. Zero asked worriedly. "Could it be that I'm overthinking?" Polly said. "Let's hope so." After walking for another half a day, Gray's group was getting closer to the royal city. They were walking in a forest with tall and dense vegetation. In the forest, mountain rocks and giant trees stood in great numbers. Some of the mountain rocks weighed hundreds of tons and were covered in green moss. Some of the giant trees were tens of meters tall, or even hundreds of meters tall. Their branches covered the sky and the sun, and they were connected together like a green cloud. Walking in, they could not help but feel insignificant. Woo! An unknown bird hid in the forest and let out a low and strange cry. Coupled with the surroundings that covered the sky, the entire forest was filled with a gloomy chill. Crack! The forest was full of withered branches. Walking on them, the sound of branches snapping could be heard. Ahead, the branches and leaves were even more luxuriant and the gloomy atmosphere was even more intense. Not good! Suddenly, Gray cried out in alarm and shouted a warning. He had obtained the infrared perception ability of the shadow snake and discovered that there were more than 10 people hiding in the forest ahead. They were hiding in the branches and leaves, using the branches and leaves as a natural barrier. Without a doubt, these people definitely did not have good intentions. They could even be members of the Wallen family. Whoosh! Zero and the other two had reacted almost at the same time Gray had shouted the warning. Because at the same time Gray had cried out in alarm, the dozen or so people who had been hiding in front of them had all rushed out from the cover of the dense foliage and were charging in their direction. Whoosh! The leader of the group was dressed in a noble-style gray robe. His face was old and his body was thin. He held a black heavy sword in his hand. It was the person who had been in contact with Gray's group all this time, Ralph Wallen. As a barbaric blood warrior, his speed was extremely terrifying. In the blink of an eye, he had already closed in on Gray's group. Furthermore, in the distance there was a huge commotion. Even the giant trees that were hundreds of meters tall were constantly being pushed down. Without a doubt, those were the formation puppets rushing over. The expressions of Gray's group changed. They had been guarding against the other party all this time, but did not expect the other party to be lying in ambush in front of them. Was it a coincidence, or had they used some method to know their route? In order to avoid being ambushed by the Wallen family in front of them, their route was not straight. Instead, it was left and right. Logically speaking, the other party did not even know where they were going to pass by and should not be able to ambush them. Gray didn't have time to think about this. He slashed out 5 ice wind blades, which carried a biting cold aura. They were like the cold wind of winter as they attacked Ralph Warren. Meanwhile, he retreated, preparing to meet up with Zero and the other two. In order to use spatial teleportation to teleport the 3 of them away, he had to be extremely close to the 3 of them and have physical contact with them. As a precaution, the 4 of them were not far apart from each other. However, they had not reached the stage of holding hands. It would be very difficult to move through the dense forest like that. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The power of the 5 icy wind blades was not inferior to the blood fiends of the barbaric blood warriors. Even Ralph Wallen could not underestimate them. Above his black longsword, countless black fogs suddenly burst forth. It was like a black river that collided with the icy wind blades. Boom! The 2 of them collided violently and were destroyed. The terrifying explosion shattered the giant trees and sent rocks flying. It temporarily isolated Gray's group from Ralph Wallen. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Gray hurriedly met up with Zero's group. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. However, at this moment, the large number of plants around Gray's group grew crazily. Thick vines grew out one after another like countless thick pythons. They stacked together and attacked Gray's group. The air was filled with the whistling of strong winds. This was the plant ability of Ralph Wallen, a barbaric blood warrior who cultivated a special blood technique. Its power was even stronger than Gray's icy wind blades. Gray alone would not be able to withstand it. More importantly, Ralph Wallen, who had been obstructed by the icy wind blades, was rapidly approaching. Boom boom. Without the slightest hesitation, Gray summoned the fanged boar and the ghost blade mantis from the space. After the 2 blood fiends appeared, one of them suddenly roared. With a terrifying destructive formless sound wave, it attacked the countless giant vines coming from the left. The giant vines were shattered at a speed visible to the naked eye. The other one pounced to the right, waving its huge sickles that were a few meters long and slashing continuously. Poof, poof, poof. A large number of vines were chopped off by the two sickles. The two sickles were waved in an airtight manner. Not a single vine could break through the blockade of the two sickles. On the other hand, Gray continuously attacked Ralph Wallen with his icy wind blades to prevent him from approaching. At this moment, Gray's group had already met up with Zero's group. However, the problem was the two barbaric level blood fiends. If they activated the space teleportation now, they would have to give up on the two barbaric level blood fiends. This was not as simple as losing two of their combat strength. After losing the two barbaric level blood fiends, Gray's combat strength would be greatly reduced. It would be much easier for the Wallen family to deal with the four of them. They did not even need the rune puppet. Just the two barbaric blood warriors would be enough. Therefore, they could not afford to lose the two barbaric level blood fiends. Thump, thump, thump. The rune puppet's figure could already be seen. It was only a few dozen meters away. As it ran, the ground shook violently as if there was an earthquake. The doomsday scene caused the birds and beasts in the forest to flee frantically. Hee used the space teleportation. Not far away, Ralph Wallen's face was calm. The corners of his mouth curled into a playful smile. He naturally understood the consequences of Gray losing the two barbaric level blood fiends. Therefore, he was very certain that Gray would not give up on the two barbaric level blood fiends. However, the next moment, the smile on his face froze. Whoosh whoosh. Two thick vines appeared. They first coiled around Gray's body, then suddenly grew out and coiled around the fanged boar and the ghostblade mantis. Whoosh. At the same time, Gray activated the space teleportation. The figures of Gray and the other three disappeared. The fanged boar and the ghostblade mantis disappeared with them. Gray used the vines to bind himself and the two blood beasts together. Then, he teleported together with the two blood beasts. Damn it, Ralph Wallen gritted his teeth as he watched Gray and the other three disappear with the two barbaric level blood fiends. He was about to capture the four of them. Even if he could not capture them, he would be able to inflict heavy losses on them and make it easier to deal with them. However, he did not expect the other party to have such a trick up their sleeves. They even had a magical weapon that could control plants. They had allowed the other party to escape unscathed. There was no doubt that the ambush had failed. The most troublesome thing was that the ambush had wasted too much time. The other party was now only a little more than a day's journey away from the capital. It could be said that the Wallen family's hunt for the other party was a complete failure. Chapter 331. 2 days later, the travel-worn Gray, Zero, and his sister appeared in front of a huge city. This was an extremely large and majestic city. The city gate was more than 50 meters tall and was made of an unknown metal. It was extremely thick and huge, as if it was a door specially made for giants to pass through. The city walls on both sides were yellow in color and extended into the distance like two crouching dragons. On the city walls, one could vaguely see many rune patterns. They were complicated and orderly linked together, extending to both sides and into the distance. It was a large-scale rune pattern. Once activated, it would create a huge protective barrier that could contain the entire city. It would seal the sky above and the ground below, making the entire city impregnable. The sky, ground, and underground would not be able to penetrate it. Furthermore, its defensive power was terrifying. Even king-level warriors would find it difficult to destroy it in a short period of time. It was known as one of the Purple Moon Kingdom's trump cards. There were also rumors that it not only had defensive properties, but also had powerful offensive capabilities. However, there was no proof. It was rumored that it was not built by the Purple Moon Kingdom. Instead, it was a building from the Empire more than 1,000 years ago that had been restored and used by the Purple Moon Kingdom. This was the capital of the Purple Moon Kingdom. We've finally reached the capital. Looking at the huge city gate, Polly, who had a trace of fatigue in her eyes, let out a sigh of relief. Her face revealed a trace of joy. Along the way, the four of them had not had a chance to rest. They did not dare to light a fire or set up a tent, so they could only sleep in the trees. They had to be alert at the slightest movement. Compared to the physical fatigue, the mental fatigue was even greater. "We're finally safe." Gray also let out a sigh of relief. The capital of the Purple Moon Kingdom was the largest city in the Purple Moon Kingdom. It was extremely prosperous, with tens of millions of permanent residents. This was the headquarters of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. It was the place where the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family's power was most concentrated. One thing was for sure. In the depths of this city, in the palace, there was definitely a king-level powerhouse overseeing it. In such a place, no power dared to fight, not even the Marquis family. Once upon a time, there was a conflict between two desolate blood warriors who were hostile to each other. They fought within the capital, destroying everything in their path. Large swathes of buildings collapsed, causing the capital to fall into chaos. Finally, they angered the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom. A king-class elite walked out of the palace, and purple flames surged like the clouds in the sky. With just one attack, the two were burned to ashes. Since then, no other faction dared to fight in the capital. The Wallen family must have given up. Zero also heaved a sigh of relief. Until now, the Wallen family still hadn't appeared. Obviously, the Wallen family had given up. As for attacking them in the capital, that was absolutely impossible. The Wallen family did not have the guts to do so. This was the royal city, where the royal family's power was concentrated. It could be said that nothing that happened here could escape the eyes of the royal family. The Wallen family wouldn't dare to attack the Sydney family in front of the royal family. "I really want to sleep for 3 days and 3 nights. Darren rubbed his temples as he spoke. After traveling for more than 10 days, even a ferocious warrior like him couldn't help but feel slightly tired. Now, he only wanted to lie down on a soft bed and sleep for 3 days and 3 nights. "Let's go into the royal city." Gray and the other two couldn't help but smile as they stepped into the royal city. Passing through a city gate large enough to accommodate more than 10 carriages side by side, Gray's group of 4 entered the royal city. The huge royal city was extremely prosperous. The streets crisscrossed like a dense spider web. Luxurious carriages crisscrossed the streets, competing with each other. Sometimes one could even see blood beasts pulling the carriages. On both sides of the streets, exquisite buildings stood in great numbers, linked together in a harmonious style. The shops within were luxuriously decorated and of high quality, and the goods they sold were all precious. Many of them could be auctioned off in a few small cities. Occasionally, one could see young men and women in noble attire, escorted by servants, walking through the bustling streets and entering and exiting these shops. So prosperous! Seeing this scene, Gray couldn't help but sigh slightly. In terms of prosperity, a city like this was no different from the big cities in his previous world. The only difference was that one walked the path of science fiction, while the other walked the path of fantasy. "Gray, is this your first time in the royal city?" Soroyan asked. "Although I've long heard of the prosperity of the royal city, this is my first time here." Gray nodded. "I've been here a few times, but every time I come, I can't help but feel shocked." Soroyan sighed slightly. "It's rare for you to be here. You can take a good look around the royal city these few days." "I have the same intention." Gray smiled. Since it was rare for him to be here, he naturally had to take a good look around. Suddenly, the expressions on Gray's, Soroyan's, and Soroyan's faces turned cold. A group of people appeared in front of them. There were 2 people in the lead of this group, both of whom were dressed in noble clothing. One of them was dressed in black noble clothing. His appearance was wizened and his face was full of wrinkles. This was the savage blood warrior of the Wallen family, Ralph Wallen, who had been chasing them non-stop these few days. The other person was a young man with short brown hair. His face could be considered handsome, but his skin was too pale, giving him an extra feminine look. This young man was the one whose right arm had been chopped off by Gray when the Wallen family had attacked the Fergus family. At this moment, the other party's right arm that should have been chopped off had already been reattached. However, from the unnatural drooping motion, it seemed that this arm had not recovered to its original state. Seeing Gray's group of four, especially Gray, the young man's eyes immediately shone with undisguised hatred. He stared at Gray like a sinister viper. "Gray Fergus!" He gritted his teeth, his voice full of sinister coldness, like gusts of sinister wind. "Your severed arm has been reattached? That's truly worthy of celebration." Gray smirked as he coldly stared at him. "Don't be so arrogant. You won't have a good ending if you make an enemy of the Wallen family," the young man said coldly. "I don't know if I'll have a good ending for now, but you definitely won't have a good ending. Can you still hold a weapon with your severed arm?" Gray smiled as he mocked. "You're courting death." With Gray poking at his sore spot, the young man was like a dog whose tail had been stepped on. He suddenly became agitated and almost attacked Gray on the street. "Is this how the Sidney family discipline their servants? A servant actually dares to speak to the heir of the Marquis family like this?" At the side, the skinny old man, Ralph Wallen, grabbed the young man's shoulder and stopped him. Ralph Wallen then looked at Zero. "Is it because after Marquis Sidney died, he no longer knows how to discipline his servants? If that's the case, I don't mind disciplining him on behalf of the Sidney family. Elder of the Wallen family, there's no need for you to worry. First of all, he's not a servant of the Sidney family, but a noble of the Sidney family. Secondly, I don't think there's anything wrong with what he said," Zero said coldly. "Of course, most importantly, I don't think you have the ability to do so. Isn't that right, Elder of the Wallen family?" With Gray's ability to control 4 barbaric-level blood fiends, if this Elder of the Wallen family were to make a move on Gray, it was obvious who would be disciplining who. You. What a sharp tongue. Ralph Wallen was so angry that his face turned white and green. He clenched his fists, his eyes cold. "You haven't rested well these past 10 days, right? You're getting old, so it's better to rest more. If you overwork yourself, you won't live long." Gray smiled as he replied. With that, Gray and the other 3 left without looking at the old man and young man. Now that they were in the capital, the other party wouldn't dare to make a move. Most importantly, the rune puppet wasn't by their side. If they really dared to make a move, the 2 of them would definitely be at a disadvantage. Because they were too tired, Gray and the other 3 didn't stroll around the capital. Instead, they found a tavern and checked in. The next day, after a good night's sleep, a refreshed Gray got out of bed to cultivate. Knock, knock, knock. Just as he finished his cultivation and took a hot bath, there was a knock on the door. "Young Master Gray, someone's looking for you." A young man's voice sounded from outside the door. He was the staff of the tavern. Yesterday, Gray and the other 3 had tipped him quite a bit. This young man was very happy and spent almost the entire day surrounding Gray and the other 3. His service could be said to be extremely attentive. "Someone's looking for me?" Gray was puzzled. If it was Zero and the other 2, they wouldn't need this young man to inform them. That was to say, the person looking for him wasn't Zero and the other 2. And in the capital, other than Zero and the other 2, he only knew people from the Wallen family. But logically speaking, the Wallen family shouldn't be looking for him. Gray asked with doubts in his heart. "Who is it?" "It's a young lady from a noble family. She's waiting for you downstairs," the young man replied from outside the door. Gray opened the door and walked downstairs. He was even more curious. How could there be someone he knew in the capital, and a young lady from a noble family at that? Chapter 332. Downstairs, Gray immediately recognized the person who wanted to see him. She was simply too conspicuous. She wore a noble's orange dress, and her hair was tied up with an orange ribbon. Her face was fair and pretty. But unlike other noble ladies, she was tall and straight, and her gentle beauty carried a hint of valiance. "It's you!" Seeing the woman, Gray immediately recognized her. This woman was one of the two women who had followed Sophia back then. He remembered that her name should be Julie. Her strength wasn't bad, and the most special thing about her was that she was a rare runemaster. She had left a deep impression on Gray. "Greetings, young Master Gray. The young mistress sent me to invite you." Julie smiled faintly at Gray, performed a standard aristocratic salute, and then said, "Yes. How did you know I lived here?" Gray frowned slightly. Taking everything into account, he hadn't even been in the capital for a day, yet the other party was actually able to know that he lived here. This caused him to become vigilant. "You clashed with the Wallen family on your first day here. It's hard not to notice you," Julie said with a smile. "What is the identity of your young mistress?" Gray asked with a frown. He had originally guessed that Sophia came from a duke's family, but now, he was not so sure. "My apologies, you should ask the young mistress. Since the young mistress did not tell you, as a servant, I cannot make a decision on my own." Julie shook her head. "All right, please lead the way." Seeing that he could not get anything out of her, Gray could only let her lead the way. As for Sophia, because she was too mysterious, he had a certain degree of vigilance. After all, when faced with the unknown, people would always have a vigilant mentality. But so far, he had not sensed any malice from her. Rather, he had obtained many things he urgently needed from her. The Wind Wolf Echelon's barbarian blood technique, and the Wind Wolf Echelon's desolated blood technique, had both been obtained from her, and he still owed her 1,050,000 gold coins. Following Julie, Gray sat in a luxurious carriage and left the tavern. King's City was a huge city with tens of millions of permanent residents. It was huge, and if one walked, it would be difficult to walk from one end to the other in a day. After traveling for half an hour, the carriage entered a mansion. This was a very huge mansion. The buildings were exquisite and beautiful. There were huge stone pillars and towering sharp corners. The colors were bright, but they did not appear complicated. Instead, they were very harmonious and unified. The buildings in the mansion didn't show any signs of aging. It was obvious that the mansion hadn't been built for a long time. After walking through the mansion for a short while, Gray was finally led to a garden. Under the morning sun, flowers of various colors competed with each other in the garden, and the fragrance of the flowers assailed the nostrils. Beside a stone table, Sophia was wearing a purple noble dress. Her long purple hair was draped over her shoulders, and her face was as beautiful as a flower fairy. "Please have a seat." Seeing Gray arrive, Sophia gestured for Gray to sit opposite her. She made a cup of milk tea and placed it beside Gray's seat. Gray took a sip. The tea was mixed with a rich milky fragrance. Now that he was influenced by the noble lifestyle, Gray could naturally taste that the milk and tea used in this cup of milk tea were of extremely high quality. After thinking about it, Gray took out a wooden box from his purple ring, placed it on the table, and opened it. Inside the wooden box there were black and purple coins. They were magic coins. "This is the one. 0.5 million gold coins I owed you last time," Gray said. "Looks like you've made a fortune." Sophia smiled and glanced at the purple magic ring on Gray's hand. She took out a rune space bag and put away the wooden box. "You can say that." Gray shrugged and looked straight at Sophia. Of course, it was not infatuation. He was sizing her up and trying to see through her. Ever since he came into contact with her, the feeling she gave him was that she was extremely mysterious, as if she was shrouded in fog. Whether it was her style of doing things or the things she did, it was all so. Facing Gray's extremely invasive gaze, Sophia didn't bashfully turn around like other noble ladies, nor did she act like some noble ladies towards a pervert. Instead, she asked in a very natural and unrestrained manner, "Do you have something to ask me?" "Yes." Gray nodded, and then looked at the other party seriously. "Who are you? Is this important?" Sophia asked back. It's not important or not, but don't you think it's unfair that only you know my identity and I don't know yours? Gray looked at her and said, All right, it's indeed a little unfair. Since you want to know, I'll tell you. I'm the second princess of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Sophia said indifferently. The second princess? Gray looked at Sophia in a daze. When she asked Julie to invite him, he had vaguely guessed that she was not a member of the third Duke's family, but a member of the royal family. After all, the royal city was the territory of the royal family. For her to have such well-informed channels in the royal city, she must be related to the royal family. However, when he got confirmation from her, he could not help but be shocked. Not only was she a member of the royal family, but she also had a rather high status in the royal family. She was actually a direct descendant of the royal family. Yes, I have an elder sister, so I'm the second princess, Sophia said very calmly. Your identity is a little scary. After a while, Gray said with a strange expression on his face. He once had an idea. When his strength reached the king stage, he would have the qualifications to talk to the royal family. He would then contact the royal family and exchange for blood fiends that were beyond the king stage. However, he did not expect that he had already contacted the royal family and had already made a deal. He did not know whether to say that he was lucky or unlucky. I believe that you won't be scared. Sophia elegantly took a sip of milk tea and smiled slightly. You really have a lot of trust in me. Gray smiled bitterly and shrugged. He was indeed very surprised, but he was not scared. With his current strength, he was not inferior to the average Marquis family. He would not be scared by her identity as a princess. Moreover, Gray was very clear about his own potential. As long as he was given time, he would definitely become a king stage expert. With such potential, he did not feel inferior in front of her. Of course, I have high hopes for you. Sophia's beautiful eyes blinked slightly and said half-jokingly. Then I really have to thank you. Gray smiled. You should really thank me. I helped you solve a big problem. Sophia said with a smile. A big problem? Gray looked at her doubtfully. The Neum family. Sophia's red lips parted slightly. What? Gray's pupils suddenly shrank and he almost stood up from his seat. He looked at Sophia in surprise. He did not expect to hear the Nahum family from Sophia. A few months ago, the Nahum family carried out a large-scale search for you in the kingdom, but I suppressed it and helped you cover it up a little. Sophia said with a slightly solemn expression. How did you offend the Nahum family? And looking at the Nahum family's attitude of sparing no effort, it is obvious that they will not let it go easily. Some time ago, I obtained a silver metal ball like last time in the Thunder Forest of the Neum territory, but I was targeted by the Nahum family, Gray explained. Originally, he was still wondering how the Duke of Neum family's intelligence network could not find any information about him. After all, he was a well-known figure in the Sydney territory. He did not expect that it was because Sophia helped to cover it up. Although he did not know how she did it, there was no doubt that he owed her a big favor this time. Thank you. Gray thanked her sincerely. Even if he was found by the Nahum clan, he still had the confidence to take everyone from the Fergus clan and flee. But doing that would surely cause him to abandon the foundation that the Fergus clan had painstakingly built up for several generations. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he would absolutely not do that. No need. Although I have helped you cover it up, it does not mean that the Nahum family could not find you. Be careful. Sophia reminded him seriously. After staying in Sophia's house for a while, Gray left. Knowing that the Nahum family was searching for him gave him an extreme sense of urgency. Your Highness, is it worth it to invest so much in him? Not long after Gray left, Julie walked into the garden and frowned slightly. Although his potential is not bad, the blood technique he cultivates limits his growth. At best, his future achievements will be that of an ordinary wild blood warrior. The difference between special blood techniques and ordinary blood techniques was not only reflected in their power, but also in their growth. Ordinary blood techniques could only be cultivated to the desolate level at the highest level. The desolate level was already the highest level of ordinary bloodlines. Above that, the king level could only be reached by those who cultivated special blood technique. His bloodline has already mutated. If he is lucky enough, it is not impossible for him to become a king-level warrior. Sophia smiled mysteriously. As for whether it is worth it or not, we will never know until the last moment. Chapter 333. Returning to the tavern from Sophia's mansion, Gray's mind was filled with the Nahum family. Knowing that the Nahum family was sparing no effort to find him, he felt a lot of pressure. It took a long time for him to calm down. Although the Nahum family was powerful, they could not act unscrupulously. At least in the royal city, they would not dare to act recklessly. If the Nahum family found out, they could settle the Fergus family in the royal city. He believed that the Nahum family would not dare to attack the Fergus family in the royal city. As long as he was given time to grow, he would naturally be able to deal with the Nahum family. The only thing that worried him was that he was now in the royal city and not with the Fergus family. If the Nahum family attacked the Fergus family, he would not be able to evacuate the Fergus family in time. Although he wanted to return to the Serene Hill immediately, Zoroyan's inheritance of the title still needed a few days of preparation. It could not be done overnight. For this reason, he asked Sophia to inform him in time if she detected any unusual movements from the Nahum family. He believed that with his purple ring's spatial teleportation, he would definitely be able to arrive before the Nahum family attacked the Fergus family. In the following days, he temporarily suppressed his worries and waited for Zoroyan to inherit the title so that he could return to the Serene Hill. Finally, the day of Zoroyan's inheritance ceremony was about to arrive. But at this time, something unexpected happened. A special team came to the royal city. This was a very special team. In the team, the carriages were all pulled by blood fiends, and the blood fiends were of high levels. The one pulling the leading carriage was a 9-meter-long desolate-level blood fiend. The ones pulling the other carriages were all 5-meter-long barbaric-level blood fiends. Last time, when the Wallen family attacked the Fergus family, the blood fiends pulling the carriages of the two barbaric blood warriors of the Wallen family were only at the berserk level. But here, every blood fiend pulling the carriages was at least at the barbaric level. It was not difficult to determine the uniqueness of this team. As for the guards around them, they weren't simple either. They were all dressed in cyan battlesuits. Under the cover of the cyan battlesuits, a strong murderous aura could not be concealed, exuding the smell of iron and blood. That was the murderous aura of someone who had been through a lot of killing. Only someone who had walked out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood could have such a murderous aura. Without a doubt, every single one of these guards was a blood warrior who had been honed on the battlefield. They were proficient in battle and killing, and they were even more proficient in coordinating with each other through battle formations. Even if they were facing a blood warrior who was a level higher than them, they would still have the ability to surround and kill him. On the left and right sides of all the carriages there was a huge golden flame symbol. It burned fiercely and dazzlingly, like an inextinguishable divine flame that wanted to burn everything in the world into ashes. This is the symbol of the Flame Kingdom's royal family. Seeing this symbol, Polly could not help but exclaim. This symbol was too eye-catching and unique. She could tell at a glance that it was the symbol of the Flame Kingdom's royal family. The Flame Kingdom is actually visiting the Purple Moon Kingdom? Gray, who also recognized this symbol, showed a hint of surprise on his face. The relationship between the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Flame Kingdom could not be said to be good. It was not hard to tell from the fact that the Purple Moon Kingdom had chased the King of Killers to the border of the Flame Kingdom and was forced to give up. And now, the Flame Kingdom's royal family was actually visiting the Purple Moon Kingdom. Although this was not the first time, it was definitely extremely rare in history. Why exactly is the Flame Kingdom's royal family here? Gray's brows furrowed slightly, but they soon smoothed out again. No matter why the Flame Kingdom had come, at the moment, that level was still too far away from him and was not something he needed to be concerned about. Instead, he was more concerned about another matter. Because of the arrival of the Flame Kingdom's royal family, would Zaloyan's succession ceremony be delayed? The arrival of the Flame Kingdom's royal family at this time, young Master Zaloyan, will your succession ceremony be delayed? It's possible. At the side, Zaloyan pondered for a moment before replying. Obviously, to the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family, the visit of the Flame Kingdom's royal family was of the utmost importance. In comparison, his succession ceremony would be delayed. If that was the case, his succession ceremony would likely be delayed. Because of the visit of the Flame Kingdom's royal family, the entire palace was in an uproar. Many people were discussing the visit of the Flame Kingdom's royal family and guessing the purpose of the Flame Kingdom's royal family. Some people guessed that the visit of the Flame Kingdom's royal family this time was to sign a non-aggression agreement with the Purple Moon Kingdom. Some people guessed that the visit of the Flame Kingdom's royal family was due to the previous incident of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family pursuing the King of Killers. Perhaps they would use the King of Killers as a bargaining chip to negotiate with the Purple Moon Kingdom. Others guessed that the visit of the Flame Kingdom's royal family was due to a marriage alliance with the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. The first and second princesses of the Purple Moon Kingdom had reached marriageable age, but there was no news of an engagement yet. The Flame Kingdom might want to strengthen the relationship between the two kingdoms through a marriage alliance. There were many guesses, and the entire royal city was in an uproar. Many nobles who received the news rushed to the royal city with various motives. Not long after, news came from the palace that Gray's worries were confirmed. Zaloyan's succession ceremony had been postponed by the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family, and the exact date had not been set. Obviously, the date would be set according to the time of the departure of the Flame Kingdom's royal family. 2 days later, in order to welcome the royal family of the Flame Kingdom, the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family held a grand banquet in the palace. The invitees were all nobles in the royal city who had been directly conferred titles by the royal family. Zaloyan and his siblings were naturally included in the list. A carriage from the royal family that had come to pick up the 3 siblings stopped outside the tavern. The 3 siblings boarded the carriage and left the tavern. However, not long after their carriage left, another carriage with the royal family's insignia appeared in front of the tavern. Moments later, Gray boarded the carriage and it headed for the palace. This is a banquet hosted by the royal family. Those who attend are all nobles conferred titles by the royal family. Wouldn't it be inappropriate for me to go? After entering the carriage, Gray saw Sophia, who was wearing a purple, diamond-studded dress. Unlike usual, her soft purple hair was tied up, giving her a hint of solemnity and maturity, and a hint of her usual elegance. Her neck was snow-white, her waist was slender, and her breasts were voluptuous. She was a perfect woman. After being slightly stunned, Gray spoke hesitantly. Gray was a little tempted to meet a member of the royal family of the Flame Kingdom, the leader of the 4 kingdoms. After all, such opportunities were definitely rare. However, he was not a noble conferred by the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom and was not invited. If he went, it would be against the rules. It's fine. Every royal family member has the right to invite people they are familiar with. It's not limited to nobles conferred titles by the royal family. Seeing Gray's interest, Sophia smiled. What about the Nahum family? Gray was worried that he might run into the Nahum family. You don't have to worry about them. The Nahum family isn't in the Imperial City. If they were, I wouldn't have invited you. Sophia explained. Since the other party had already said so, Gray did not refuse. A banquet with 2 royal families was an opportunity for him to broaden his horizons, and he was indeed very tempted. After entering the palace, Sophia went to meet up with the other royal family members, while Gray was led to the banquet hall. It was a huge and splendid banquet hall. On both sides of the banquet hall were huge stone pillars. The pillars were dark gold in color and carved with many exquisite patterns. In the center of the banquet hall were tables covered with white cloth. The tables were filled with all kinds of exquisite food and fragrant red wine. Men and women in noble attire walked in the banquet hall, with a few men in the center. These people were either the patriarch of a large family or the direct descendant of a large family. Gray saw Zaloyan and his siblings among them. They were chatting with familiar nobles. "It's him." Soon, he noticed a young man who was surrounded like the moon. The young man was dressed in proper brown noble attire, and held a glass of red wine in his right hand. It was the young man from the Wallen family. His right hand is indeed completely healed. Looks like the news is true. A few days ago, Gray had heard the news from Zaloyan. He knew that the Wallen family had spent a large sum of money to request the royal family's consecrated potion master to refine some kind of magic medicine to heal his right hand. It seemed that this was indeed the case. "Why are you here?" The young man from the Wallen family also noticed Gray in the banquet hall. He was stunned at first, but soon walked over with a cold smile. "Why are you here? Don't you know that this is a banquet only royal nobles can attend?" "Young Master Edgar, who is this?" one of the people clustered around him asked. "Just a nobleman. I don't know how he got in." "The young man from the Wallen family," Edgar sneered. "Nobleman?" The surrounding people couldn't help but frown. A banquet of this level was not something a nobleman could attend. As nobles of the kingdom, they had a sense of superiority in front of noblemen. Most of the time, they disdained to attend banquets where noblemen were present. Edgar's eyes turned slightly, and his expression suddenly turned cold as he berated loudly. "Speak, what is your goal in sneaking into the palace? Are you trying to assassinate a distinguished guest from the Flame Kingdom? To dare to appear here, he was simply asking to be humiliated. It would be even better if he could use the palace guards to kill him." Chapter 334. Young Master Edgar is right. This person must be up to no good by sneaking into the palace. "Speak, why did you sneak into the palace?" Seeing the sudden change in Edgar's tone, the people around him immediately reacted, and their tones became unfriendly. The sudden commotion naturally attracted the attention of the other people in the banquet hall. Everyone's gaze turned towards this direction. Some were puzzled and listened to what was happening. Some frowned slightly, thinking that such thoughts were beneath the nobility. "Why is Gray here?" Seeing Gray suddenly appear in the banquet hall, the expressions of Zaloyan and the other two changed, and they quickly walked over. "I advise you not to resist. Otherwise, for the safety of the distinguished guests of the Flame Kingdom, we don't mind killing you on the spot." Edgar's eyes were cold. His hands bent into sharp claws, making cracking sounds. The power of blood coiled around them like silver hooks, grabbing at Gray. If this claw were to be caught, it would be inevitable that a few bloody holes would appear on Gray's body. Gray took a few steps back and avoided the claw. He naturally could not allow the other party to attack him like this. "You still dare to resist? Attack together and capture him. Death is inevitable." Seeing Gray dodge, Edgar's cold smile deepened, and he immediately called out. The few nobles around him could not help but smile coldly. They spread out and surrounded Gray. "Stop, Edgar, what are you trying to do?" Zaloyan shouted to stop him. "What am I trying to do? Of course, to capture this assassin who sneaked into the palace." Edgar chuckled coldly. "He is a noble of the Sidney family, not an assassin." Zaloyan explained, and then he looked at Gray. "Gray, why are you here?" "Someone invited me here." Gray frowned slightly. "Liar, at this kind of banquet, only His Majesty and the three princes have the right to invite outsiders." "Are you going to say that you know His Majesty or the three princes?" Edgar laughed coldly. "What happened?" At this moment, a group of guards dressed in battle armor walked over. The person in the lead was a middle-aged man dressed in black battle armor. He had an ordinary face and a powerful aura. As such a high-class banquet held by the royal family, there was naturally no lack of guards around the banquet hall. The middle-aged man was one of the guards. Seeing that the commotion was getting bigger and bigger, he immediately rushed over. "Captain Kyle, this person did not receive an invitation. He's someone who snuck into the palace." Edgar glanced coldly at Gray and said loudly. The middle-aged man waved his hand, and the guards around him spread out and surrounded Gray. Then, the middle-aged man's sharp gaze locked onto Gray. "Please show me your invitation." "I don't have an invitation, but I was invited by Her Highness the Second Princess," Gray explained. "Liar. With your status, how could you possibly know His Highness? I advise you to behave yourself," Edgar sneered. "Captain Kyle, this person has a powerful magic weapon in his hand. He's very dangerous. Please hand over your magic weapon." The middle-aged man, Kyle, thought for a moment and looked warily at Gray. "I was indeed invited by Her Highness the Second Princess." Gray frowned. The magic weapon in his hands was extremely special. He really did not want to hand it over to others for safekeeping. More importantly, he did not have the magic weapon to control the barbarian-level blood fiend. After all, he relied on his ability to control the barbarian-level blood fiends, not the magic weapon. "You still want to quibble? Captain Kyle, I suggest that we capture him. This person is obviously lying. He can't possibly know Her Highness the Second Princess." The middle-aged man, Kyle, was obviously persuaded. He and the other guards began to slowly approach Gray. Seeing this, Edgar sneered and mocked at the side. "You think you can know Her Highness the Second Princess? Why can't he know her?" At this moment a faint voice sounded. "He's just a descendant of a count's family. How dare he?" Edgar replied disdainfully. Halfway through his words, he suddenly realized that the surroundings had quietened down and everyone was looking at him with strange gazes. He couldn't help but turn around and look behind him. His expression suddenly changed. "Second Princess, Your Highness." Sophia was wearing a long purple dress. She had a noble temperament and an inviolable royal aura. She glanced at Edgar and then said to the captain of the left, Kyle. "Captain Kyle, you can leave now. I invited him here." "Yes, Your Highness." Captain Kyle bowed respectfully and left with the other guards. Only Edgar and a few other aristocrats were left. They did not know whether to retreat or not. They could feel that many people's gazes were on them. There was mockery and amusement in their gazes. Numerous gazes fell on them, making them feel uneasy. They wished they could find a hole in the ground to hide in. "This is the most outstanding descendant of the Wallen family? I heard that his arm was chopped off not long ago. The Wallen family paid a hefty price to reattach his arm. I didn't believe it at first, but now I do. Indeed, with this kind of brain, no wonder he was tricked. To think that the future heir of the Wallen family is like this, haha." After witnessing the entire conflict between the nobles and their descendants, they could naturally see that Edgar was deliberately targeting Gray. It was understandable for aristocrats to bully others. To them, this was a normal thing. But to act rashly without understanding the other party's situation was too foolish. Now, not only had he failed to make fun of the other party, but he had also left a bad impression on the second princess. The gains did not make up for the losses. "Let's go." Ignoring Edgar, Sophia waved at Gray, indicating for him to follow. Gray nodded at the three siblings and followed. "Looks like you have quite a few enemies." Sophia turned back to tease him as they walked out of the banquet hall and into the palace corridor. Gray could only smile bitterly. Strictly speaking, he did not have many enemies, but each of them had a powerful background. For example, the Oka Marquis family, the Wallen Marquis family, and Duke Niam's family. Each of them had great influence and power. Of course, if their influence was too small, they would not be able to become his enemy. Before they became his enemy, he would have already killed them. For example, the leader of the Mantis mercenary group or the Poison Scorpion mercenary group. After forming a grudge, he immediately killed them. He never showed mercy to his enemies, but some of his enemies had powerful backgrounds. If he killed them, it would be very troublesome, so he could only put them aside for the time being. After walking around the gardens of the imperial city with Sophia, when they returned to the banquet hall, the banquet was about to begin. Sophia went to meet up with the other members of the royal family, while Gray met up with the three siblings. The three of them asked him how he knew Sophia, and he gave them a brief explanation. Not long after, the members of the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Flame Kingdom all arrived. At the head of the group was a man with a crown on his head. The man was dressed in a golden suit, and his face was dignified. His gaze was wise and far-sighted. He was the current king of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Even though he was already over 50 years old, his powerful strength did not make him look old. This king had been a desolate blood warrior for a long time, and there were even rumors that he already had the strength of a king-class warrior. No one knew if this rumor was true. Walking beside him was a woman who had maintained herself very well. She was dressed in a purple-black dress, and she looked noble and elegant. She was the current queen. Behind the two of them were the eldest Prince Francis Violet, the eldest Princess Hilya Violet, and the second Princess Sophia Violet. The man was handsome and noble, while the woman was beautiful and elegant. To be born into the royal family, their appearance and temperament were naturally not bad. Walking side by side with the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom, and slightly behind the king and queen, there were a total of 6 people. The leader of the group was a young man dressed in yellow. His red hair was like a raging flame, and his face was handsome. His eyes were sharp, and his temperament was extraordinary. Behind him were 2 old men. The old men were quite old, and their faces had clear wrinkles like the bark of an old tree. However, their eyes occasionally shone with a sharp light that was breathtaking. It was obvious that their strength was extremely terrifying. Behind the 2 old men, there were 3 young people, 2 men and 1 woman. All of them had outstanding temperament. The arrival of the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Flame Kingdom naturally became the center of the banquet. According to the king of the Purple Moon Kingdom, the young man dressed in yellow leading the Flame Kingdom was one of the princes of the Flame Kingdom. His name was Niklos Blaze. It's actually him. Hearing the name of this prince of the Flame Kingdom, Zaloyan's expression became slightly shocked. You've heard of this person before? Gray, Polly, and Darren looked curiously at Zaloyan and asked. I've heard of his name before. Zaloyan nodded. I've heard that he's the most talented prince of this generation of the Flame Kingdom. His strength is extremely terrifying, and I've heard that he's already a wild blood warrior. He's already a wild blood warrior at such a young age? Gray and the other 2 were shocked. The other party was definitely not even 30 years old, but he was already a wild blood warrior. If he continued to grow like this, it was almost certain that he would become a king-class warrior in the future. It was no wonder that the Flame Kingdom, the strongest of the 4 kingdoms, had such terrifying talent. The atmosphere in the banquet hall was extremely lively. At this moment, Niklos Blaze took a step back and bowed to the king of the Flame Kingdom. Your Majesty, I've received orders from my father to visit the Purple Moon Kingdom, this time to propose to the princess of the Purple Moon Kingdom. I hope to use this marriage to break the gap between the 2 kingdoms and establish friendly relations between the 2 kingdoms. Chapter 335. Marriage Alliance? The royal family of the Flame Kingdom wants to have a marriage alliance with the Purple Moon Kingdom? Hearing the Flame Kingdom's Prince Niklos Blaze's request for a marriage alliance, all the nobles were stunned. Then, they couldn't help but start discussing spiritedly. The Flame Kingdom is the most powerful of the 4 kingdoms. If the Purple Moon Kingdom can have a marriage alliance with the Flame Kingdom, they will definitely gain a powerful ally. If it's a marriage alliance, the dispute with the Flame Kingdom that has lasted for hundreds of years will definitely end. Some nobles were delighted and happy to see this happen. They were already tired of the wars that happened every few years. They actually want to marry Her Highness the Princess? Dream on. The Flame Kingdom is full of ambition. Even a marriage alliance won't bring about long-term peace. We definitely can't let Her Highness marry them. Some nobles who had loved ones who died at the hands of the Flame Kingdom and had deep hatred for the Flame Kingdom gritted their teeth and resolutely opposed the marriage. Oppose, resolutely oppose. We definitely can't let Her Highness marry him. There were even more nobles who simply didn't want Her Highness to marry the Prince of the Flame Kingdom. After all, if she didn't marry the Prince of the Flame Kingdom, they, as nobles, still had a chance. The Flame Kingdom actually came for a marriage alliance? Gray, Zero, and the other two were all shocked. Although there were such guesses in the capital over the past 2 days, they didn't take it seriously. The Flame Kingdom and the Purple Moon Kingdom had been at odds for hundreds of years. Every few years they would go to war. Their hatred was deep, and their relationship could be said to be extremely bad. It was almost impossible for these two kingdoms to have a marriage alliance. Flame Kingdom, what a good scheme. Do you really think the Purple Moon Kingdom is a fool? Beside him, a square-faced man dressed in black noble attire snorted coldly. Uncle Edmund, what do you mean? Zero looked at the square-faced man and asked respectfully. The square-faced man in front of him was a Marquis of the Tutte Marquis family. He had a good relationship with the Sydney Marquis family. When Zeloyan and the others were chased by the assassins of the King of Assassins, they were prepared to flee to the Tutte family for protection, but they were stopped. Now that the Purple Moon Kingdom, the Scarlet Kingdom, and the Flame Kingdom have formed an alliance, if the Scarlet Kingdom and the Jewel Kingdom were to have a marriage alliance, the Scarlet Kingdom and the Jewel Kingdom would never trust the Purple Moon Kingdom that has a marriage alliance with the Flame Kingdom. Naturally, the alliance would fall apart. Your Majesty, I've come with the sincerity of peace between the two countries. Please grant my wish. Nicholas Blaze said with a sincere expression. Thank you for your sincerity, Your Majesty. Peaceful coexistence with the Flame Kingdom is also the wish of the Purple Moon Kingdom. The King of the Purple Moon Kingdom said, Does Your Majesty agree to the marriage? An old man among the 6 from the Flame Kingdom said with joy. In terms of age, His Highness Niklos and Her Highness are the most compatible. What do you think, Your Majesty? Please let me finish. The King of the Purple Moon Kingdom raised his hand slightly and said, Although I'm very happy with your country's sincerity, Her Highness is already engaged, so I'm sorry, but I can only disappoint Your Majesty of the Flame Kingdom. What about Her Highness? Although His Highness Niklos and Her Highness are a few years apart in age, it's not that big. The other of the 2 old men from the Flame Kingdom immediately said. Unfortunately, Her Highness is also engaged. The Queen of the Purple Moon Kingdom shook her head. May I know who Her Highness is engaged to? Niklos Blaze's expression turned slightly ugly as he repeatedly hit the wall. He could not help but ask. Forgive me, Your Highness Niklos, but it's not convenient to disclose the person of the engagement at the moment. The Queen of the Purple Moon Kingdom declined with a smile. Your Majesty, as far as the Flame Kingdom knows, the 2 princesses of the Purple Moon Kingdom are not engaged yet. Now that they suddenly have an engagement, could it be that you feel that the Flame Kingdom is not sincere enough? Niklos Blaze said with a gloomy expression. Are you questioning the Purple Moon Kingdom? The King of the Purple Moon Kingdom's expression suddenly turned cold as a terrifying aura emanated from his body. Suddenly, a great pressure exuded from him. In the hall, everyone could not help but feel a chill in their hearts as if an invisible sharp blade was placed on their necks, making them not dare to move at all. Nicholas Blaze, who bore the brunt of the attack, couldn't help but turn pale. Cold sweat slid down his forehead. It wasn't until 2 old men took a step forward and stood in front of him on both sides that his expression eased. He hurriedly said, Let's go. I dare not. Please forgive me, Your Majesty. I was just being impulsive just now. I didn't mean to offend Your Majesty. The King of the Purple Moon Kingdom retracted his aura and glanced at the other party. Since it was an unintentional act, I won't argue with you. But please note that this is the Purple Moon Kingdom. Yes. Niklos Blaze's face was ashen as he said with a gloomy expression. Your Majesty is already a king-class warrior. Taking a deep breath, Soroyan was shocked. The rumor that the current king of the Purple Moon Kingdom was already a king-class warrior had now been confirmed. Just now, the king of the Purple Moon Kingdom had used his aura, which was the symbol of a king-class warrior. 3 king-class warriors, or even more. Gray's pupils shrank violently. To be able to use his aura, the king of the Purple Moon Kingdom was undoubtedly a king-class warrior. What he noticed was that the 2 old men had actually blocked the aura of the king of the Purple Moon Kingdom for Niklos Blaze. Under the aura of the king of the Purple Moon Kingdom, even Niklos Blaze, who had the strength of a wild blood warrior, could not help but turn pale and break out in cold sweat. However, the 2 old men had easily blocked the aura of the king of the Purple Moon Kingdom. If there were no surprises, these 2 must also be king-class warriors. As king-class warriors, aside from blocking the aura of the king of Niklos Blaze, they did not do anything else. It must be because they were also intimidated. It was very likely that there were king-class warriors of the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom hiding in the dark. Thinking about it carefully, since the king of the Purple Moon Kingdom dared to meet the people of the Flame Kingdom, he must have the confidence to immediately suppress them. Otherwise, if the royal family and the upper echelons of the kingdom were all assassinated here, it would be disastrous. The conflict disappeared. Under the deliberate livening of the atmosphere by some nobles who knew the situation, the atmosphere became lively again. Whether it was the people of the Purple Moon Kingdom or the Flame Kingdom, they all had smiles on their faces. The atmosphere was very harmonious, at least on the surface. However, no one knew what they were thinking in their hearts. Niklos Blaze held a crystal cup in his hand and had a smile on his face. However, deep in his eyes, there was a trace of imperceptible coldness. After clinking his cup with a noble of the Purple Moon Kingdom, he vaguely glanced at one of the 3 young men who came with him. "Greetings, Your Majesty." The young man understood tacitly. His eyes became arrogant as he walked up to the king of the Purple Moon Kingdom and bowed. "What do you want?" The king of the Purple Moon Kingdom's eyes moved slightly as he calmly asked. "Now that the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom has gathered, I am very interested and would like to exchange pointers with the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom." "Nonsense." Niklos Blaze reprimanded and apologized to the king of the Purple Moon Kingdom. "Please forgive me, Your Majesty. He is used to being arrogant. How dare he act so recklessly?" Then, his tone suddenly changed. "Of course, if it is possible, I hope that the elites of the Purple Moon Kingdom can teach him a lesson so that he will not continue to be so arrogant. Of course. Blood techniques are a battle technique created by our ancestors during the battle with the Blood Fiend. It is true that one cannot just cultivate and not fight." The king of the Purple Moon Kingdom's expression did not change as he nodded in agreement. In the face of the challenge issued by the Flame Kingdom, if he were to back out, it would only weaken the prestige of the Purple Moon Kingdom and make a joke out of himself in front of the Flame Kingdom. Therefore, he had to accept the challenge. "Your Majesty, please let me do it." How dare he provoke us in such an occasion? "Let me teach this brat a good lesson." Hearing the king of the Purple Moon Kingdom's agreement, the young nobles of the Purple Moon Kingdom immediately rubbed their fists. Naturally, there was no reason for them to back out from a challenge. Moreover, if they could take this opportunity to defeat the people of the Flame Kingdom, they would definitely be valued by the royal family. Suddenly, waves of fighting spirit were emitted from the young nobles of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Some of the young nobles who did not have the fighting spirit also had a strong fighting spirit under the instructions of their family heads. Everyone in the banquet moved and left the banquet hall. They came to a battle stage with many weapon racks on all sides. This was a very large battle stage with a length and width of 100 meters. It was bronze in color and was completely built with a type of bronze stone. This type of building material was several times harder than steel. Even a berserker would have a hard time leaving a mark on this type of building material. Who will go first? The young man of the Flame Kingdom casually picked up a spear from the weapon rack. He lightly stepped on the ground and climbed onto the battle stage. He sneered as he glanced at the young nobles of the Purple Moon Kingdom. "I'll go first." Unable to stand his opponent's arrogant attitude, a young nobleman snorted coldly and picked up 2 short swords and stepped onto the battle stage. Whoosh! The young nobleman was dressed in green. His body turned into a green light and flashed out. The wind whistled. In the next moment, he appeared behind the young man of the Flame Kingdom. His short swords flashed with a dazzling luster as he ruthlessly slashed at the young man of the Flame Kingdom. Bang! With a loud sound, the young nobleman in green flew back with blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. Just as his short swords were about to hit the young man of the Flame Kingdom, the young man of the Flame Kingdom seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. He thrust his spear backward and hit the young nobleman in the chest. Immediately, several of the young nobleman's ribs were shattered and he was sent flying. Puff! After falling to the ground, the young man in green spat out another mouthful of blood. His face turned pale. It was obvious that his injuries were not light. The young nobleman's family members hurriedly climbed onto the battle stage and treated the young nobleman's injuries. On the battle stage, the young nobleman of the Flame Kingdom was only in his early 20s. His blue hair fluttered in the wind, and his body emitted a sharp aura like a long spear. Coupled with his strength that defeated his opponent in one blow, the young nobleman of the Purple Moon Kingdom immediately became solemn. The opponent was so young, yet he had the strength of a berserker. This alone was something that many of them could not do. However, in the next moment they were all furious. The blue-haired young man stood on the battle stage. He glanced at them and smirked. "Don't come if you don't have the strength of a berserker." Next. Chapter 336. Arrogant. The blue-haired young man's words immediately caused a wave of anger. A few young nobles walked out at the same time. In the end, a 27 or 28-year-old man stepped onto the stage first. He had a dark complexion and came from a count family in the kingdom. It was a family that was directly conferred a title by the royal family. Generally speaking, the background of the nobles in the kingdom was stronger than that of the feudal nobles. Therefore, at the same level, the nobles in the kingdom were much stronger. Some count families that were directly conferred a title by the royal family were not inferior to the marquis family. The family that the dark-complexioned man came from was such a family. There were barbarian blood warriors in the family. In the near future, if they could establish military exploits, it would not be impossible for them to become part of the marquis family. He held a heavy blade in his hand and looked coldly at the blue-haired young man. Then, he took heavy steps, held the blade with both hands, and slashed at the blue-haired young man with great force. Clang! The blade and the spear collided, releasing bright sparks. The dark-complexioned man and the blue-haired young man could not help but take a step back and collide again. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of weapons colliding rang out one after another. The bright sparks were dazzling and eye-catching. Boom! After another collision, the dark-complexioned man and the blue-haired young man both took a few steps back and coldly looked at each other. "This is more interesting." The blue-haired young man licked his lips, and the aura from his body became even more fierce. In the next moment, the spear in his hand spun violently, and his movement speed increased drastically. He moved at a much faster speed than before. Whoosh! The long spear pierced over. The dark-complexioned man was shocked and quickly dodged to the side. However, he was still grazed by the long spear. A long tear appeared on his noble clothing, and traces of red appeared on his skin. He attacked the blue-haired young man with a backhand attack, but the latter had already dodged and attacked him from the other side. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The blue-haired young man moved quickly and attacked the dark-complexioned man from tricky angles. The wounds on the dark-complexioned man's body gradually increased. Knowing that he would lose if this continued, the dark-complexioned man immediately used his blood beast ability. A large amount of flames turned into a thick pillar of fire and crashed towards the blue-haired young man. The blue-haired young man snorted. Lightning wrapped around his long spear and pierced towards the huge pillar of fire. Puff! The flame pillar quickly disintegrated, and the long spear pierced through the flame pillar, stabbing into the stomach of the dark-skinned man who couldn't dodge in time. Immediately, dark red blood sprayed out. Purring! Taking advantage of the moment when the dark-skinned man was distracted by the pain, the blue-haired young man kicked the dark-skinned man, and the dark-skinned man was sent flying. After landing on the ground, he was in so much pain that his body was bent over. His face revealed a pained expression. He struggled several times but was unable to get up immediately. In the end, he was helped down by his own clansmen. The blue-haired young man spoke calmly, as if he had done something unworthy of praise. Next. This calmness naturally angered the younger generation of the Purple Moon King. Immediately, another young noble stepped onto the battle platform and attacked the blue-haired young man. However, he was defeated again. Puff! The young noble fell to the ground, his blood spraying onto the bronze stone floor, dyeing it red. One after another, a total of 3 young people stepped onto the battle platform, but they were all defeated by the blue-haired young man. It's my turn. Including the previous 2, there were now 5 young people who had been defeated. Edgar sneered and stepped onto the battle platform. I'll fight you. He didn't step onto the battle platform immediately, because if he did, how could he show his strength? He could only wait for the other young noble to defeat him. Only then could he show his strength. I'll try to redeem myself in front of the second princess. With that in mind, he looked at the blue-haired young man and sneered. The other party had defeated several young noble children of the Purple Moon Kingdom, but he wasn't angry at all. Instead, he was grateful. If it weren't for the other party's challenge, he wouldn't have gotten the chance to redeem himself in front of the second princess. Do you need to take a recovery potion? If I defeat you and you say that it's because you've used up too much of your blood energy, then it'll be meaningless. No need. A loss is a loss. I won't use that kind of excuse. The blue-haired young man raised his head proudly. And if you have the ability, you can give it a try. Arrogant! Edgar sneered. Holding his sword with both hands, he rushed towards the blue-haired young man violently. When he was about to get close, he suddenly slashed his sword violently. Under this move, the air was torn apart. The strong wind was like a wind blade, scraping painfully on one's face. One could imagine how powerful his sword was. The blue-haired young man's expression didn't change. His long spear swept out like a silver snake, meeting the sword that was slashing towards him. Boom! With a loud bang, the sword and the long spear violently collided. The long spear and the sword that collided faintly bent. That was a sign that they couldn't bear the heavy burden in front of a huge force. Although the weapons placed on the weapon rack near the battle platform weren't magical weapons, they were definitely not made of ordinary metal. It wasn't hard to imagine how strong the 2 of them were since they couldn't bear the heavy burden. Puff, puff, puff. After the violent collision, both of them couldn't help but retreat. At this moment, Edgar sneered. He held his sword with one hand and put his other hand into his pocket. He took out something the size of a thumb and threw it on the ground. Whoosh! On the stone slab under his feet, a plant suddenly grew rapidly. It grew a large number of branches and soon covered a large area around it. This plant was brownish-purple in color, and the surface of each branch was covered with densely packed thorns. It looked extremely horrifying. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A large number of branches were like twisting giant snakes, attacking the blue-haired young man directly. The air was full of ear-piercing whistling sounds. A special plant. Seeing the plant that grew under Edgar's control, Gray's eyes narrowed slightly. Generally speaking, if a plant's ability left the forest, its combat power would be greatly reduced. However, in one situation, not only would its combat power not be reduced, it might even be enhanced. That was when there was a special plant seed that was suitable for combat. Edgar's situation was obviously like this. The other party had a special plant seed that was suitable for combat. Not only would his combat power not be reduced, it might even be enhanced. Gray had thought of looking for such a plant, but it was very rare and difficult to find. After searching for a long time, he still couldn't find it. Humph! Seeing the attacking plant vines covered with thorns, the blue-haired young man's expression finally became slightly serious. He snorted coldly. On the long spear, a thick thunder snake appeared, emitting a breathtaking aura. Boom, boom, boom. His long spear struck out continuously, hitting the attacking vines one after another. The vines were instantly charred black and turned into ashes. With a wave of his long spear, not a single vine was able to get close to him. Then, holding the lightning spear in his hand, he rushed towards Edgar. Edgar's expression changed. He activated his plant ability. Plant vines quickly grew out, but they were quickly destroyed. Finally, the blue-haired young man closed in on Edgar. Lightning wrapped around his spear. He thrust it straight at Edgar. Edgar controlled the plants and vines to block, but they were penetrated. The lightning spear struck his abdomen. Boom! Edgar was instantly sent flying. A clear burn mark appeared on his abdomen. His body was black as if he had just crawled out of a coal mine. Under the attack of the lightning, his body trembled unnaturally. For a long time, he couldn't get up from the ground. In the end, it was the Wallen family who helped him down. Edgar lost too. The nobles and descendants of the Purple Moon Kingdom could no longer remain calm. Their expressions finally changed. Although Edgar was a little arrogant, there was no doubt that he was talented in cultivation. Among the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom, there were few who could match him. However, such an opponent was still defeated. It was obvious that the blue-haired young man still had some strength left. Those who were originally full of confidence suddenly lost their confidence. "Brother, are you confident?" Polly looked at Soroyan and asked. "I don't think he's a match." Soroyan shook his head. The opponent cultivates a special blood technique, and the ability of the blood fiends is special. They can be combined with the body's ability. Among those in the mad level, there are few who can match him. I'm afraid that only when he reaches the barbarian level and can control the ability of the blood fiends and attach the ability of the blood fiends to his weapon will he have the confidence to fight him. At this point, he looked at Gray and asked, "Gray, are you confident?" Polly and Darren also looked at Gray. On the way to the Imperial City, the destructive power of Gray's frost wind blade had deeply shocked them. In their opinion, among the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom, Gray was definitely one of the people who could defeat the blue-haired young man. Gray smiled. He didn't shake his head or nod. With the power of his frost wind blade that had reached the barbarian level, he was confident that he could defeat the blue-haired young man. However, he didn't plan to fight on the stage. It would be like a cockfight. If he went on stage and exposed his trump card, he wouldn't do that if there were no benefit. After drinking a bottle of recovery potion and resting for a moment, the blue-haired young man looked at the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom again and said, "Next." However, no one responded to him for a long time. The younger generation that he was looking at couldn't help but look away. After witnessing Edgar's defeat, they either knew that they weren't a match for him, or they didn't have much confidence. They were hesitant, so they were all silent for a while. Seeing the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom avoiding his gaze, The blue-haired young man smiled contemptuously. Standing on the stage, his blue hair fluttered in the wind. He glanced at the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom with disdain and said, "No more." Chapter 337. Are there no more? On the battle stage, the blue-haired young man held a spear in his hand as his clothes fluttered in the wind. His gaze swept across the young nobles of the Purple Moon Kingdom one after another, his eyes full of contempt. All the young nobles of the Purple Moon Kingdom who caught his gaze couldn't help but avert their eyes. Some people's faces were flushed because of the humiliation. They wanted to go up the stage and fight, but they were held back by their elders, not allowing them to go up the stage. Knowing that they were going to lose, they still went up without hesitation. That wasn't courage, but stupidity. Going up would only add another number to the opponent's winning streak. On one side of the battle stage, where the royal families of the Flame Kingdom and the Purple Moon Kingdom were. The royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom looked terrible. 6 people went up the stage in a row, but none of them were a match for the young man. In the end, no one dared to go up the stage to fight. This was obviously a slap to the face of the Purple Moon Kingdom. On the other hand, the royal family of the Flame Kingdom were all smiling as they glanced at the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom. The royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom rejected their marriage request without hesitation, which made them furious. Now, they finally taught the Purple Moon Kingdom a lesson and made the Purple Moon Kingdom understand the power of the Flame Kingdom. Your Majesty, it seems that the young heroes of the Purple Moon Kingdom are quite reserved. Niklos Blaze looked at the king of the Purple Moon Kingdom and said with a smile, "Good strength. You're indeed an outstanding member of the Flame Kingdom." The king of the Purple Moon Kingdom praised with a smile on his face. "Your Majesty, please don't laugh at me. His strength isn't even in the top 10 among the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom," Niklos Blaze said humbly. Looking at the seemingly humble but arrogant Niklos Blaze, Francis Violet frowned slightly. With his current strength, he could easily defeat the blue-haired young man on the battle stage, but he couldn't make a move. The royal families of the 4 great kingdoms had always been recognized as a power that transcended the aristocratic families. If a member of the royal family like him were to attack a member of an aristocratic family, even if he won, it would be a disgrace to the royal family. It was like an adult beating a child. If they won, would the people around them praise them? Instead, he said that he was bullying the weak. The huge Purple Moon Kingdom was not that weak. In fact, among the nobles of the Purple Moon Kingdom, there were some who could defeat the other party. Unfortunately, these people were not in the capital. Is there anyone else? On the fighting ring, the blue-haired young man looked around and asked. But still, no one responded. Some of the young nobles were so angry that their faces turned red, and their fists were clenched so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. But in the end, under the orders of their elders, they endured it. Looks like the nobles of the Purple Moon Kingdom don't have much fighting spirit today, Niklos Blaze said with a smile as he took in the almost ferocious expressions of these people. Francis Violet's face turned cold. In the end, he decided to make a move. Although this would also disgrace the royal family, it was better than the whole kingdom being challenged, and no one dared to accept the challenge. Indeed, they don't have much fighting spirit. However, at that moment, a hand grabbed him, and a voice sounded beside him. Sophia, who was beside him, took a step forward and said with a smile, "Prince Niklos, please don't embarrass me. I've made a fool of myself, Your Highness. The nobles of the Purple Moon Kingdom are all lazy fellows." "Oh!" Niklos Blaze looked at Sophia with interest, his eyes full of playfulness. He wanted to see what she was going to do. He didn't believe that she could find someone who could fight against his subordinates in this group. If there was, why didn't she come out just now? Sophia didn't say anything else and walked in a direction. Everyone's eyes followed her. Her footsteps were neither fast nor slow. She walked past the young nobles who lowered their heads in shame one after another. Finally, she walked to the side of 4 young nobles and stared straight at one of them. This young man had a head of black hair and blue eyes. His face was delicate and pretty, but it was quite pleasant to look at. It was Gray. "You know that I'm in a lot of trouble now." Being stared at by Sophia, Gray smiled bitterly. Sophia helped him avoid the Nahum family's search, which was a great help. It was reasonable to say that he should make a move now that the other party came looking for him. However, the Nahum family's search was still ongoing. He really didn't want to make a move in a public place, as it would be easy for the Graham family to notice him. Sophia smiled like 100 flowers blooming. She took a few steps forward, and a delicate fragrance had already entered Gray's nose. Only then did she approach Gray's ear and speak. "Don't worry. After losing so much face today, these nobles can't wait to cover it up. They definitely won't help you, a feudal noble, publicize it. Moreover, I won't let you make a move for nothing. If you can defeat him, I'll give you a bottle of Purple Moon Potion." Purple Moon Potion? The exotic fragrance assailed his nostrils, and Gray was a little distracted. However, after hearing about the Purple Moon Potion, he couldn't help but feel refreshed, and his face revealed some surprise. The Purple Moon Potion was a magical potion unique to the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom. It could rapidly increase one's strength, and its effects were more than 10 times stronger than the concentrated potions he had taken before. It was rumored that a single bottle had allowed someone to break through their realm and advance from a ferocious blood warrior to a berserk blood warrior. Although it wouldn't have such an obvious effect on him, who was already a berserk blood warrior, it would definitely shorten the time he needed to advance from a berserk blood warrior to a barbarian blood warrior. Now that he was facing the threat of the Nahum family, what he lacked the most was time. Such a bottle of potion could be said to be something he urgently needed. Deal. Without much consideration, Gray agreed. The threat of Nahum was like a fishbone stuck in his throat. His strength would naturally increase as fast as possible. He naturally wouldn't miss any opportunity to increase his strength. Of course, the most important thing was that he owed Nahum a favor. Finally, someone is willing to come up. On the battle stage, the blue-haired young man, who had been waiting impatiently for a long time, glanced at Gray with contempt and said indifferently, "I hope you can last a little longer." He didn't think that Gray could defeat him, because he was extremely confident in his own strength. If a barbarian blood warrior didn't appear, there was almost no one who could be his opponent. As for the other party being a barbarian blood warrior, in his opinion, it was absolutely impossible. The other party's age was at most the same as his. He hadn't even become a barbarian blood warrior, so how could the other party be one? Last a little longer? Gray smiled faintly and said with a deep meaning, "I hope so." Swish. The blue-haired young man didn't say anything more. On the long spear, lightning wrapped around it, and a lightning snake constantly swam. Then, he held the lightning spear with both hands and pierced it towards Gray. Although he looked down on Gray with words, his actions didn't have the slightest bit of contempt. Although he didn't think that the other party could defeat him, the other party must have some strength. After he had defeated 6 people in a row, he still dared to come up. How could his strength be weak? Crackle! Accompanied by the dancing lightning snake, the tip of the long spear was like a cloud, quickly attacking Gray. The terrifying thunder and lightning caused the air to crackle. Under the terrifying thunder and lightning, the air was like boiling water, constantly exploding. Shio! The blue-haired young man's eyes were cold. The long spear wrapped in the lightning cloud was extremely terrifying. In the blink of an eye, it was already close to Gray. Suddenly, swish! An emerald-green ice wind blade appeared in front of Gray, facing the attacking lightning cloud. The next moment, the lightning cloud and the ice wind blade violently collided. Boom! With a loud noise, the lightning snake danced wildly, the wind blade shot wildly, and the cold air spread. The blue lightning, the emerald-green wind blade, and the white cold air intertwined and then mutually annihilated each other, exploding. The air was violently stirred, and the bronze slate was full of scorch marks and scratches. The bronze slate, which even the blood berserker could hardly cause damage to, could no longer bear this kind of damage, and showed signs of damage. Pa pa pa! A copious and irresistible force passed from the long spear into the blue-haired young man's hand. The blue-haired young man retreated again and again, and the hand holding the spear trembled violently. The long spear almost fell out of his hand. The blue-haired young man looked at Gray in surprise, his eyes full of shock. There was actually someone whose blood fiend ability was comparable to his blood fiend ability combined with his body ability. At this moment, she finally understood what the other party meant when he said, "I hope so," in a joking tone. He didn't hope to last longer in his hands, but hoped that he could last longer in the other party's hands. The blue-haired young man was already so surprised, let alone the others below the stage. What a powerful blood fiend ability! Is this person already a barbarian blood warrior? How is that possible? How old is he? How can he already be a barbarian blood warrior? Isn't that guy a nobleman? How can a nobleman be so strong? The nobleman and nobleman's faces were full of surprise, astonishment, and astonishment. A nobleman actually had such a powerful blood fiend ability, while they, as noblemen of the kingdom, were unable to do so. Who was the nobleman and who was the nobleman of the kingdom? Is this a mixed ability of ice and wind blade? Sophia, could it be that he's cultivating the legendary hybrid ability blood technique? Francis Violet asked in surprise as he looked at Sophia, who had already returned to the royal family's side. As he asked this question, no matter if it was the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom or the people of the Flame Kingdom, all of them couldn't help but look over. Even the king of the Purple Moon Kingdom was no exception. Mixed Ability Blood Technique was a legendary blood technique that could control two special abilities, and its power was superior to a single special blood technique. How is that possible? Mixed blood techniques were only a legend during the Empire's era, let alone now. Sophia smiled and shook her head. The blood technique he practices is a wind-type blood technique, but it mutated after consuming the blood of an ice-type blood fiend. That's why it has such power. 15_15674/ Chapter 338. I see. It was obvious that Niklos Blaze let out a sigh of relief. If the Purple Moon Kingdom had a hybrid blood technique, it would be a huge threat to the Flame Kingdom. After all, the hybrid blood technique was much stronger than the special blood technique. It could be said that the Purple Moon Kingdom would be at a great disadvantage if they were to fight at the same level. If he really encountered such a situation, he would either start a war to snatch it, or kill everyone who had mastered this blood technique, since he didn't have it and no one else could have it. What a pity! Francis Violet felt it was a pity. If it really was a hybrid blood technique, its value would be inestimable. Even the royal families of the four kingdoms would be tempted. Which force wouldn't want to have such a blood technique that was invincible in the same level? However, if it was mutated by swallowing a high-grade bloodline, it wouldn't be very attractive. Mutations were accidental. If two people who cultivated the same blood technique at the same level swallowed the same high-grade bloodline, it was entirely possible for one person's bloodline to mutate while the other's bloodline didn't. Such a thing was almost impossible to replicate, so naturally, it wouldn't be very attractive. What blood technique are you cultivating? The blue-haired young man stared at Gray with a solemn expression. His opponent's blood technique was so powerful that it could actually compete with his blood fiend ability and physical ability. This had never happened before. I can't tell you. Gray smiled and walked toward the blue-haired young man. The blue-haired young man subconsciously took a step back, but he immediately reacted. His face was filled with anger. The lightning snakes on his spear became even more violent. They twisted crazily like the spear of the thunder god and attacked Gray again. Whoosh! An icy wind blade appeared and attacked the blue-haired young man. Whoosh! However, at this moment, the blue-haired young man suddenly moved to the side like a bolt of blue lightning and dodged the icy wind blade. Then, he quickly approached Gray again. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! 3 consecutive icy wind blades attacked the blue-haired young man in front of Gray, but they were all dodged by the blue-haired young man. Due to the unique blood art that he cultivated, his speed was extremely fast. The reason why he chose to meet force with force at the beginning was because he felt that it was beneath him to dodge. With the combination of his Blood Fiend's abilities and his physical abilities, every spear strike of his possessed a destructive power that far exceeded that of a blood warrior of the same realm. He simply disdained to do such a thing. Whoosh! The blue-haired young man was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he was already close to Gray. However, at this time, even with his speed, dodging was no longer easy. After all, he was too close to Gray. Whoosh! An icy wind blade that looked like it was polished from green jade swiftly attacked the blue-haired young man. It seemed that the blue-haired young man would not be able to dodge it. However, the blue-haired young man did not panic. Instead, he sneered. Razor twisted his long spear and pointed it at the ice wind blade. Boom! With a loud explosion, thunder and lightning wreaked havoc, wind blades sputtered, and cold air spread out. Then, everything disappeared. The blue-haired young man, however, rushed past them, rushing towards Gray without slowing down. He had blocked the ice wind blade. With the combination of his Blood Fiend's abilities and his physical abilities, his combat power was extremely strong among those of the same realm. With his full strength, he blocked the ice wind blade that he almost could not dodge. Crackle! A sinister smile flashed across his face. The long spear that was entwined with razor snakes pierced towards Gray like a bolt of blue lightning. The long spear emitted a terrifying aura that could take one's soul away. In the face of the long spear that was piercing towards him, Gray's expression remained calm. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 emerald green ice wind blades appeared and attacked the blue-haired young man who was charging towards him. They were emerald green all over, like 2 streaks of green light. They were so fast that one could not see them clearly. What? 2 slashes at the same time? There were actually 2 ice wind blades that were attacking him. The blue-haired young man was suddenly shocked. The long spear that was entwined with razor snakes was pointed at the 2 ice wind blades, as if there was a thunder cloud entwined around the tip of the spear. Boom! The long spear that was entwined with thunder clouds violently collided with the 2 ice wind blades. Then, the razor snakes on the long spear suddenly disappeared, leaving only the wind blades and the cold air that were still wreaking havoc. An abundant and unstoppable force was transmitted from the long spear into the blue-haired young man's hand. The web between his thumb and forefinger cracked, and the long spear immediately fell out of his hand. Then, the wind blades turned into fragments and slashed at his body. Poof! 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 His body flew backwards as if it had been hit by a huge hammer. Wounds appeared on his body. Then, with the wounds as the center, the cold air spread, and his entire body was frozen into an ice sculpture. Bang! The ice sculpture fell to the ground, making a sound like a hard piece of iron falling to the ground. It rolled a few times on the ground before finally coming to a stop. The blue-haired young man maintained a strange posture, frozen in the ice sculpture. After a while, he broke free from the hard ice on his body and broke out of the ice. His body was covered with pieces of ice dregs, and his body could not help but shiver. The wounds on his body that did not have time to bleed because of the cold ice finally burst open, and dark red blood flowed out. His clothes were dyed red, and he became a bloody man. Your blood fiend ability, how could it be so strong? He did not know if it was because of the cold or because he was shocked, but his words were stuttering. Pa. Gray did not answer. Instead, he walked towards the blue-haired young man. From the moment the blue-haired young man charged at Gray to the moment the blue-haired young man was injured and frozen into an ice sculpture, Gray had not moved a single step from the beginning to the end. At this moment, he finally took a step towards the blue-haired young man. Seeing Gray approaching, the blue-haired young man's face was full of fear and palpitations, and he kept retreating. His opponent's blood-fiend ability was too terrifying. If not for the fact that his opponent was too young, he would almost think that he was fighting with a barbaric blood warrior. So strong! Looking at Gray, who looked like he was taking a stroll in the courtyard, but was able to force the blue-haired young man to continuously retreat, the eyes of the young nobles of the Purple Moon Kingdom were filled with shock. The blue-haired young man who had frightened them to the point that they did not dare to fight was not a match for his opponent at all. The difference in strength between the two was obvious. Since the beginning of the battle, their opponent had not moved at all, which made them very surprised. Even the blue-haired young man was not a match for his opponent. How big was the difference in strength between them, who were far from being a match for the blue-haired young man? A mixed bloodline? No, it should be a mutation of the bloodline, so that's why he has such terrifying power. I thought that the blue-haired young noble from the Flame Kingdom would have no match for him in the crazy grade. Now it seems that the strongest in the crazy grade is this nobleman invited by the second princess. Among the nobles, there was no lack of discerning people. They immediately judged that Gray's blood-fiend ability was powerful, and there was a trace of surprise in their eyes. They had tried to consume high-grade blood to promote the mutation of their bloodline, but they had not succeeded. They did not expect this nobleman to be so lucky as to succeed and mutate his bloodline. Retreating again and again, the blue-haired young man had retreated to the edge of the 100-meter-long fighting ring, almost falling off the platform. Clenching his fists, he looked angry and sullen. Not to mention the Purple Moon Kingdom, even in the Flame Kingdom, his combat strength was almost invincible among those of the same level. When had he ever been forced to such an extent? The shame and anger in his heart made him want to find a hole to hide in. Whoosh! Suddenly, a gust of wind blew over the fighting ring. Then, a young man appeared between Gray and the blue-haired young man. The young man had a head of gray hair, a tall and slender figure, and a handsome face. He should be a few years older than the blue-haired young man. Like a mountain, he stood between Gray and the blue-haired young man, blocking Gray's way. There was a faint, powerful aura coming from his body. This was a young man who was even more powerful than the blue-haired young man. "How about I be your opponent?" The gray-haired young man smiled at Gray with his hands behind his back, but there was coldness in the depths of his eyes. The Purple Moon Kingdom had rejected the marriage alliance with the Flame Kingdom, which made the Flame Kingdom lose face. The reason they sent the blue-haired young man to challenge him was to humiliate the Purple Moon Kingdom. Now that the blue-haired young man had been defeated, and in a crushing manner, it was the Flame Kingdom that had been humiliated. Naturally, they had to regain their lost face. Otherwise, if word got out that the younger generation of the Flame Kingdom had suffered a great loss in a fight with the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom, they, the nobles who came to the Purple Moon Kingdom, would be punished. Not interested. Gray glanced at the gray-haired young man who was blocking his way, then turned and walked towards the stairs of the fighting ring. He could still get a bottle of Purple Moon potion if he fought with the blue-haired young man, but what could he get if he fought with the gray-haired young man? Of course, the most important thing was that he felt that the gray-haired young man's strength was not simple. If he did not use his ability to control corpses, he might not be his opponent. How could someone who dared to fight after the blue-haired young man had been defeated so easily be simple? Whoosh! With a flash, the gray-haired young man blocked Gray's path like a gust of wind. "I won't use my magic weapon, but you can use your magic weapon. How about it?" Chapter 339. Nothing. Gray looked at the gray-haired young man calmly. He still had no intention of accepting the challenge. If he could use the magic weapon, then he could openly use his ability to control corpses. He was almost invincible. No matter how strong the gray-haired young man was, he was definitely not a match for 4 blood fiends that could unleash the full power of a barbarian. However, he still had no intention of accepting the challenge. There was no benefit in fighting with the gray-haired young man. Sophia only promised to give him a bottle of purple moon potion if he defeated the blue-haired young man. She did not promise to fight with the gray-haired young man. Naturally, he would not agree to a battle that did not benefit him at all. Please make way. Gray looked at the stairs behind the gray-haired young man and said calmly. What if I don't? The gray-haired young man's eyes flashed with coldness as he said coldly. Gray was too lazy to say anything else. He walked to the edge of the platform and prepared to jump down from the platform. Whoosh! But in the next moment the gray-haired young man suddenly appeared there, almost colliding with Gray. Gray raised his eyebrows and said unhappily, Are you trying to force me to fight with you? Below the platform, the members of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family were slightly dissatisfied. Forcing a noble of the Purple Moon Kingdom to fight in the Purple Moon Kingdom's territory was too disrespectful of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Your Highness Niklos, isn't this noble of your kingdom too much? How dare he force my friend like this? Sophia's beautiful face was cold as she said with dissatisfaction. Your Highness, please forgive him. Your friend is powerful and has aroused his fighting spirit. He is just eager to learn from each other and has no ill intentions. Niklos Blaze's voice was sincere and apologetic, but he had no intention of calling his subordinates back. I wonder if your Highness can persuade your friend to accept the challenge. If he allowed his opponent to avoid the battle, the news that the young nobles of the Flame Kingdom were inferior to the young nobles of the Purple Moon Kingdom would be confirmed. Naturally, he could not allow such a thing to happen. Otherwise, even if he was the Royal Highness, he would be criticized by the kingdom's upper echelons. Your Highness Nikos, your request puts me in a difficult position. This friend of mine doesn't have a belligerent personality. It took me a lot of effort to persuade him to join the battle. Sophia's face showed an embarrassed expression. How did your Highness persuade him? Niklos Blaze hurriedly asked. 3 bottles of Purple Moon Potion. I spent a total of 3 bottles of Purple Moon Potion before he agreed to join the battle. Sophia said with a distressed expression on her face. Purple Moon Potion? And 3 bottles. As a citizen of the Flame Kingdom, Niklos Blaze had heard of the famous Purple Moon Potion and naturally understood its value. He had actually spent 3 bottles of Purple Moon Potion to invite this person. Even as a member of the Flame Kingdom's royal family, he couldn't help but feel that the price he had paid was too high. But now, he had no choice but to do so. After all, this was related to the reputation of the Flame Kingdom. Niklos Blaze's heart twitched slightly as he spoke. Your Highness, I'm willing to use 3 bottles of flame potion to invite him to join the battle. As long as he can defeat the noble of the Flame Kingdom on the stage, I'll give him 3 bottles of flame potion. Flame potion was a potion unique to the Flame Kingdom's royal family that could increase one's strength. Its value was on par with the Purple Moon Potion of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Of course, he also played a trick and said that the condition was to defeat the noble. He naturally knew the strength of the noble of his kingdom. In his opinion, the other party had almost no chance of winning. Naturally, the other party would not be able to obtain the 3 bottles of flame potion. Your Highness Nikos has really given me a difficult problem. Sophia's brows knitted together. After pondering for a moment, she said, I'll give it a try. I can't guarantee if I can convince him. Sophia strode with her slender legs, walked up the stairs to the platform, and arrived in front of Gray. She once again leaned close to Gray's ear and whispered into his ear. As long as you can defeat the noble of the Flame Kingdom on the stage, the Prince of the Flame Kingdom promises to give you a bottle of flame potion. Its value is on par with the Purple Moon Potion. Because she helped Gray cover up the news, she naturally knew that Gray possessed a magical weapon that could control barbaric-level blood fiend. She was not afraid that Gray would lose. Deal. Gray immediately agreed. Now that he was in urgent need of this magical potion, he naturally had no reason to reject the other party's offer. Do you still mean what you said just now? If we fight, you won't use your magical weapon, but I can use mine. Sophia walked down the platform. Gray stared at the gray-haired young man with a burning gaze. At this moment, the other party had become much more pleasing to the eye. After all, thanks to this person, he would have another bottle of magical potion. Of course, seeing that Gray had agreed to the battle, the gray-haired young man was delighted. He secretly decided that he must teach this guy a lesson. However, he was still cautious. He knew that with the heritage of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family, they could definitely come up with magical weapons that could allow them to fight above their level. It's limited to what you have now. You can't borrow it from others. Understood. Gray nodded and retreated to the side of the platform. He only stopped when he was almost at the other side of the platform. He shouldn't have agreed. Indeed, he was too impulsive. Seeing that Gray had agreed to the challenge, some nobles shook their heads slightly. At this time, it was obvious that one should quit while they were ahead. Seeing that the blue-haired young man had been defeated, the gray-haired young man still dared to go up the platform. How could his combat power be simple? Although they could use magic power weapons, how powerful could a feudal noble have? Therefore, they were not optimistic about the battle between Gray and the gray-haired young man. Among the nobles, there were a few who had strange expressions. Among them were Zero and the other two, as well as members of the Wallen family. Idiot! Edgar Wallen had been injured by the blue-haired young man. After taking a healing potion, he finally recovered. Seeing that the blue-haired young man had been defeated by his enemy, Gray, he actually felt some satisfaction in his heart. Although Gray was his enemy, the blue-haired young man had made him lose face in the entire noble circle of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Now that someone had made him lose face, even if that person was his enemy, he could not help but feel satisfied. Now that he saw that the gray-haired young man on the platform had actually allowed Gray to use a magical weapon, his expression could not help but become strange. He looked at the gray-haired young man as if he was looking at an idiot. Having dealt with Gray many times, he naturally understood that the magical weapon in Gray's hands that could control barbarian-level blood fiends was very powerful. One had to know that in the Wallen family, 2 barbarian blood warriors were not a match for it even if they joined forces, let alone the gray-haired young man alone. Although the gray-haired young man was powerful, how could he be stronger than the 2 barbarian blood warriors of the other family? Furthermore, this was under the condition that he did not use a magical weapon. 1. Looking at Gray, the gray-haired young man sneered. The sword in his hand shot out a hazy green light, followed by an ear-piercing sound. The sword in his hand was of an ordinary style. He had casually taken it from the weapon rack at the side, and it was not a magical weapon. However, at this moment, the sword in his hand exploded with a force that was comparable to a magical weapon. This was because he had attached his wind-type blood fiend ability to the weapon. There was a huge divide between the berserker level and the barbarian level for blood warriors. After reaching the barbarian level, not only would the power of the blood fiend ability increase, but it would also increase the control of the blood fiend ability. At this level, the way they controlled the blood fiend ability would no longer be crude, but extremely precise. Not only would they be able to control the power of the blood fiend ability to a certain extent, but there were also some people who could attach the blood fiend ability to their weapons. By combining the blood fiend ability with their physical strength, they could unleash a power that far exceeded either of the two. He was one of the people in this group. Whoosh! Holding the green longsword in his hand, he was like a ray of green light as he swiftly pounced on Gray. He wanted to defeat his opponent cleanly. This was the only way he could redeem the face that the Flame Kingdom had lost. As he ran, the air on the battle stage was torn into pieces, and the wind was raging. Suddenly, A huge figure appeared in front of him, accompanied by a huge fist that was as thick as a water tank. The fist tore through the air and hammered toward him. He was slightly shocked, but after all, he was from the upper nobility of the Flame Kingdom. He immediately understood what kind of magical weapon his opponent had. After becoming more cautious, the green longsword that was entwined with green light did not seem to have any intention of backing down. It slashed toward the huge fist that was coming toward him. Clang! It was obviously metal colliding with flesh, but the sound of metal colliding with flesh was ear-piercing. Then, the huge creature was actually sent flying and landed heavily on the arena. "Humph!" he snorted coldly. The magical weapon in his opponent's hand was so powerful that it was beyond his expectations. It could actually control a complete barbarian-level blood fiend. However, he was even more powerful. As a barbarian blood warrior who cultivated a special blood technique, his combat power was not something that an ordinary barbarian-level blood fiend could contend against. Just as he was about to continue approaching Gray, a huge ant suddenly appeared. Its body was covered with a black carapace, and its body was about 5 meters long. It looked like a black armored car and was about to crash into him. There was no doubt that this was another barbarian-level blood fiend. He can actually control 2 barbarian-level blood fiends. His expression turned grave. Even though he was powerful, it would definitely be a tough battle against 2 barbarian-level blood fiends. A trace of determination appeared in his heart. He calmed himself down and an unyielding fighting spirit rose from his body. So what if there are 2 barbarian-level blood fiends? Watch how I chop them into pieces. However, in the next moment, the raging fighting spirit in his body suddenly disappeared as if it had been doused with cold water. Thump, thump. 2 more colossal creatures appeared. One was covered in black fur and looked like a small moving mountain. The other was green and had 2 huge size. There was no doubt that these 2 were barbarian-level blood fiends. In other words, his opponent was 4 barbarian-level blood fiends and a person whose strength was close to barbarian level.